Welcome to Backpacker Radio, presented by The Trek. I am your co-host, Zach Badger Davis. Sitting to my right is...
Hi, I'm Juliana Chauncey, a.k.a. Chaunce.
Are you going to have to change your trail name?
No, I will always keep my trail name. I'm just shocked that you haven't asked to see the merchandise yet.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Yeah, you're a bad friend.
Keep in mind I'm a guy.
Yeah.
I'm assuming most of your guy friends probably haven't. Although I guess they're also friends with...
Garrett.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say I want to stop talking about this because Rachel made the suggestion to save this for the live podcast, and I think that's a good idea.
But this comes out after the live podcast.
Does it? I don't think it does.
Oh, I thought you meant for like the actual live podcast.
I want to get the full story on the live podcast.
Yeah, okay. There's nothing interesting about me.
Well, duh.
Welcome to the episode.
All right. Before we get to today's awesome in-person interview, we got a few, 4 reminders for you. Number one being is we are very close to AT Trail Days. I think, is it 2 episodes from now? We'll actually be crossing the threshold. But if you are heading to AT Trail Days, I guess even today's guest will be there as well. So all 3 of us will be there. If you're heading to AT Trail Days, come swing by the Trek and Backpacker Radio's booth, and also swing on down to the author booth to hear today's guest. We're also going to PCT Trail Days.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit of a different format as we are going to be boothless for this one, but we will be doing podcast-related stuffs out there. So if you are headed to PCT Trail Days and you've got a good poop story or know someone who would make a good guest on the podcast, definitely hit us up. Next item I've got here is please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/backpackerradio. We do bonus episodes for our Patreon supporters, a minimum of 1 episode per month. Lately we've been doing a lot more. We recently just posted a bonus episode with everyone's favorite real hiking Viking. And also, so we have some brand new hats. This is kind of a cross promotion for Patreon, but the people that got first dibs at the hats were our Patreon supporters. We have a very limited supply in the Trek store. By the time you hear this, they're probably gone. So just another reason to support us on Patreon. And yes, that's enough beating around the bush. Let's get right to today's interview with Audrey Glowstick Payne, who's an accomplished thru-hiker, having completed the Appalachian Trail, Foothills Trail, Colorado Trail, Catalina Trail, Muir Trail, Wonderland Trail, and the Patagonia O Circuit, among others. She recently published her AT memoir, Where the Rhododendrons Bloom. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us here on Backpacker Radio.
Thank you so much for having me, you guys. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. Also, you're an OG. Were you a Trek blogger, or was it Appalachian Trails at the time? I'm trying to think of the timeline.
No, it was the Trek.
It was the
Trek.
What
it was
year was
Trek
this?
blogger, 2018.
Oh, okay. It was way more recent than my memory had. Time is a slippery beast, especially
It sure is.
when you mix kids in the equation. You lose track of everything. So I want to know Glowstick. What's the story behind that trail name?
So I used to really like going to festivals of all variety, music, wine, whatever. And so when I got out onto the AT, I was using a tent that I had already owned. Like, I didn't buy a ton of new gear for the AT. I didn't have a ton of money to do that. So I just brought a tent that I already owned. And so my first night up on Springer Mountain, open up my tent to set it up, and inside is a bright yellow glowing glow stick that had just been cracked, like, in my bag that day. It was still bright and glowing, and I must have left it in there from, like, the last time I had used my tent. I had been at a music festival at Devil's Backbone in Virginia several months prior, because I was living in Washington, D.C. at that time. And so then I also got off the AT to go to a music festival and a wine festival. So my friend Ibex named me Glowstick.
It's a good name.
Wasn't Big Agnes doing, like, a line of tents built in with, it had some, like, light up features, Mountain Glow.
Yeah, they were like battery powered, I think, and
Yeah.
they had lights on the outside of the tent.
Gotta give it to Big Agnes. They're always trying new stuff.
That was clever, I thought.
Yeah.
I liked those tents.
I wonder, do those still exist?
I don't know.
I think that was before my hiking days, because I remember seeing one like pre-hiker Chaunce.
Yeah.
And being like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah. It was always interesting to me because, like, obviously I understand the appeal to more of the car camping type. But
yeah.
I don't think a thru-hiker wants their tent to have a inherent light up feature. I don't know. It seems like an
I assume you could turn it off too.
It just seems like there's got to be some weight penalty for that. That
for
seems
sure.
Yeah.
Totally non-essential. Anyways, it's attracting from us. So you mentioned you were living in D.C. That usually comes with a good career story. What were you doing in D.C.?
Yeah, I was working on my career and doing a whole lot of working all of the time. I had moved there for grad school. I went to American University for public relations. And then I worked at the Environmental Defense Fund. I worked at an entertainment communications firm, working in publicity and promotions for movies. And then I was working at World Wildlife Fund in their communications department. So working a lot of hours, being expected to be on email and available all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So
What was the most exciting PR project that you ever got to work on?
I mean, the movie publicity job was really cool. It was not sustainable. I wasn't making much money. I was working at least like 60 hours every week. But, I mean, I got to promote movies and plan red carpets where celebrities would come into DC to promote their movies. Somebody would come in and I would spend 2 days running their press tour. I would ride around with them in the car and pick them up at their hotel and take them to different interviews and take them to like advanced movie screenings. So I got to meet a lot of famous people, go to a lot of fancy meals, plan and go to red carpets. So that was
shouldn't
really
have
interesting.
mentioned that part because you're about to get a bunch of follow-up questions, John. So I'll let you start.
Who's the coolest celebrity that you have gotten to interact with, and why?
Such an easy question. Jason Segel from How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
He was the greatest. He was just such a cool, fun, nice guy. You probably won't be surprised to learn that famous people often are not super cool or fun or friendly or like.
There's a follow-up question where
we're
I'm coming
foreshadowing
from.
my question.
But Jason Segel was super fun and he was really
He's
engaged.
very tall, isn't he?
He's very tall,
Yeah.
very tall. He was super engaged. He was giving me like dating advice. I felt like he was like my big brother or something for the 2 days that I spent with him. He was really fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Conversely, who was the most horrible to work with, and why?
Also easy. Noah Baumbach, who's an
Who's that?
indie director. So if you know who Greta Gerwig is, who directed the Barbie movie,
Yeah.
so that's her partner.
Oh.
But he's awful. He thinks very, very highly of himself. He would not follow the schedule at all. Like I would always give these people a schedule of here are all the events that we have to do, and I would tell them when I would leave them for a break, I'd be like, okay, you need to be back here at this time. I'll be waiting for you for this. And he would not follow the schedule, and then he'd get mad when we didn't have time to do extra things that he wanted to do. He was on the phone all through what was supposed to be his dinner break, so he didn't get to go to dinner before an advanced movie screening. So he was like loudly eating candy out of his publicist's purse, like complaining about not having time for dinner. He would not speak directly to me, even though I was running the press tour. He brought his publicist. He would only speak to his publicist in front of me, and then she could speak to me. And then he was living in New York City, and so he had taken the train instead of flying down to DC. And apparently the movie studio could not get him into first class on the train on the way back. So he refused. He refused to go and coach, and he actually just didn't go to the movie screening that he was supposed to be introducing and doing a Q&A for, because he was like, no, I'm not going. They have to get me on an earlier train that has first class. I'm not sitting with, he didn't say peasants, but
Yeah.
he applied
Peasants.
peasants.
Did you tell him you know of a good trail that goes from roughly DC area to New York that he could just walk if he was too good for it?
I did not, but the AT was maybe not quite so high on my mind yet at that time.
Say the name of that person again?
Noah Baumbach.
All right, now we all know who to throw tomatoes at.
Yeah.
I have one more, and then I'll let you go.
I want to follow up on that.
Yeah.
I just like the prima donna stories. Do any others stand out to you?
Not really. I mean, people would mostly be like aloof or, nothing really egregious.
Yeah.
But I do have another cool celebrity, another one I
Okay.
thought that was really cool. Ethan Hawke was really fun. He was a really cool guy. He wanted to have lunch with all the people working on his tour. He ended up missing his flight because he was out too late partying or something. But he was never a jerk about anything. He was like, oh yeah, so I missed my flight. Which I knew because I was supposed to ride in the car with him to the airport and he didn't show up. But he was like, oh, do you think you could get me on a different one? I lost track of time. I was doing stuff.
Yeah.
He was just really fun.
He seems very cool in the movie Boyhood. That's where I fell in love with him.
That might have been the tour that he was
really?
in for. It might have been. I can't remember for sure though.
Yeah. I think a very underrated movie.
So when my dad did video production editing in New York City for his career, they would get requests from celebrities, like when they'd come to film for Tyra Banks or Martha Stewart or any of these shows, like they would request to have certain things sometimes. And what I've gathered is that sometimes celebrities have like obscure, wild requests for what they want to have on hand.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things would celebrities request like are on hand and available?
Only green M&Ms.
Yeah, shit like that.
So nothing too crazy, but I do remember having to run around DC, having to find different like green juices, like fresh green juices. And I don't even remember whose request that was, but they were very insistent that they needed these fresh green juices all of the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that makes sense. Like if your physical appearance is your moneymaker.
My body is a temple.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be pretty anal about that stuff. I'm actually surprised that it was only one person and not everybody.
No, I mean, there were probably some other ones, but nothing too crazy. I hear musicians are way worse about that.
That's interesting. Any fun stories from PR stuff outside of the movie genre? You said Wildlife Foundation?
Yeah, so I also worked at World Wildlife Fund. That was a really cool job. Just full of passionate people who really love the outdoors and really love wildlife and animals, and just like a very cool work environment where, you know, people have like blue hair and just really, really care about the outdoors.
Yeah. All right, so bridge this gap for us. How do you go from burnt out PR person to prolific thru-hiker?
Well, I've always been pretty active and pretty outdoorsy. Like, I grew up in the country, and my family did a lot of camping and hiking when I was a kid. I went abroad for a summer when I was in high school to New Zealand, where I spent like half the summer at an outdoor pursuit center, backpacking and kayaking and doing a bunch of fun stuff. And then in college, like, I studied abroad to Madagascar, where I lived in a tent at a research station for a semester, like learning about rainforest ecology and lemur behavior and cool stuff like that. So I've always been really interested in the outdoors and being pretty fit and all that. But when I was in DC and I was working all these crazy hours, I got a really bad back injury. I herniated a disc in my back at a group exercise class at the gym. And so for like 2 years, I couldn't do anything. Like, I was in horrendous pain. Some people that herniate a disc don't even know they do it. For some people, it's debilitating. For me, it was debilitating. And I was only 29 when I did it. So from the ages of like 29 to 31, just couldn't do anything. I had to stop running cold turkey. Walking down the street was horribly painful. Riding the metro to work was horribly painful. Sitting at my desk was horribly painful. And so I eventually got a spinal fusion surgery, which was a long and painful recovery. But while I was dealing with that, I was reading a ton because I couldn't do much else. And I read Bill Bryson's A Walk in the Woods about the AT, just fell in love with the history and the natural history and the idea of doing it. And so I promised myself, if I'm ever healthy enough and well enough, then I'm going to make this happen. I'm going to go do it. And so just as I was kind of finally healing from my surgery, I immediately landed my dream job at WWF. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to stay for 2 years. If the AT's still calling me, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go do it. And so that's what I did. And I loved my experience. I loved hiking the AT. And just ever since then, it's just opened up my eyes to all of these other long trails. And, you know, now I live in Colorado. It's much easier to get out hiking and backpacking all the time. And my life here is just, it's way more chill. I have a way better work-life balance. I get a lot of time off. And so I'm able to get out and do all these things that, you know, at one time I may have taken for granted. But I'm like, I don't know if my body is going to hold up. Like, once you have one spinal issue, you're more likely to have another one. So I'm like, I got to do these things while my body is holding up still.
Yeah. And how has your back held up?
Really well, actually. Since moving to Colorado from the East Coast, actually, it's gotten way better because I have arthritis in my back from the injury. And so you get all these, you know, rainstorms on the East Coast all the time. Like, you know, DC's a pretty rainy place. Where I'm from in Western New York is one of the rainiest places in the country.
Where are you from in Western New York?
A really small town called Portville. It's about 2 hours south of Buffalo on the Pennsylvania border.
Oh, are you a Bills fan?
I mean, you have to be a Bills fan when you live there.
Go
you have
Bills!
to be. Go Bills.
Sorry, continue.
Sorry about Diggs.
Oh, that's okay.
We don't mind.
You should.
But anyway, so since moving here to a drier climate, my back is way better. And I didn't have many issues with it on the AT. Like, it would, things kind of lock up when there are storms coming in. So, there's a lot of rain on the AT, so that would happen. But it's not, like, before my surgery, it was nerve pain, just, like, being shocked. Like, it felt like being shocked by electricity constantly. And now it's like, my muscles might lock up if there's an incoming storm.
Yeah. Do you do active PT to help prevent injuries or prevent soreness?
No, but I do have to stay really active. And I find that if I do slip on my exercise, like, especially like in the winter when it's dark at 5 p.m. and whatever, if I start kind of slipping on stuff, I'll notice my back does bother me more. So I just try to really keep up with, doing yoga and hiking. And I've just started rock climbing again after a long hiatus, which is good for core strength. So that's really good for your back. So.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so AT happens in 2018. It sounds like you have a pretty full career prior to your finding the AT. So how old were you when you started on the AT?
I was 33.
Okay. I asked because that's kind of like the no man's land. I'm sure you probably have thought about this quite a bit, but most people are fresh out of school, and then you get a whole other subsection of the demographic that are people that are retirees.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've done a good amount of backpacking in my 30s, so I felt this way myself at times, but it feels like being in your 30s is sort of the no man's land of the thru-hiking demographic, especially on the AT.
So everyone says that, and for sure I noticed that the big demos were like 20-somethings and recent retirees. But I actually met a lot of 30-somethings on the trail. Yeah, I had a lot of 30-something friends on the AT.
That's interesting because, I'm obviously small samples everywhere you go, but there were a couple of not very older folks in my group, and then everyone else was, fresh out of school or somewhere around that.
I noticed I was not meeting many 40-somethings. So I think like the whole trail I met like maybe 3 or 4 40-somethings. So in my mind I was like, okay, so all the 40-somethings are like raising families and like making money.
Sure. It does check out. I should pull up the Trex survey.
But that's a good question.
I bet 40 is probably the least represented demographic of the adult bracket.
And so I just turned 40. And so I'm like, I really want to do another big long trail. But I'm like, am I going to be just like a sole 40-year-old out there by myself?
Yeah.
Here's a question I have. So when I did the AT, the PCT, those trails, I hadn't really started a career yet. I was in my mid to late 20s, which shame on me for not having started one yet, but I was working in summer camps in the summer. I was doing like freelance graphic design in the winter. Like it wasn't anything where I was like putting money in a 401k.
That sounds great though. That sounds like a fun life.
Yeah. Not great for compound interest, but great for like my morale in my 20s in some ways. Other ways, no. But I've thought about this since like accepting my fate as an employee of the corporate world, where it becomes a lot harder and scarier to think about taking time off work. Like when I did the AT, I had done a graphic design job for 1.5 years, which was my longest time at a desk up until that point, and I knew I wanted to leave it. So I was like, I will, and I was still in this mindset, I think, where I was like, I'll just leave this job, go hike the AT, and I'll look for a new one when I get back. No big deal. And now I feel like my mind is kind of in a place where it's like a lot scarier to do that, because it's like, well, what if I don't find a job when I get back? And all these thoughts that never would have crossed my mind when I did it. And I'm grateful to that because I did all this stuff and I wasn't like super scared of it. But I'm also like recognizing that in myself now and being like, it's scarier now to leave when, I'm not in an entry-level position anymore. It might look weirder to have a gap. Being where you were in your career, what was going through your mind? And like walk me through kind of those months leading up to doing the trail and having to pivot from being someone who was working consistently for a period of time before it.
Yeah, so it was really scary. It was really anxiety inducing to leave my job for sure. especially because I had just been working so hard for several years at that point in DC. And like I had finally landed this dream job. Like I had moved to DC because I wanted to work in the environmental nonprofit sector. So like the two big places to do that in the US are in New York and DC. I didn't want to be in New York. And so I ended up in DC. And it took me a few years to land this job at WWF. And so I was like, just deciding to leave to go do the AT because I had been through this big ordeal with my back and I'd been working so many hours for so long. I was burnt out. Like, I knew that I had to go. I was like, I have to go and I have to do this now. Like, it's just calling me so strongly. But I was having nightmares for a month before I started the AT because I put in my notice. I gave them a month because I really liked my job. I really liked my boss. I didn't want to screw anybody over. So I gave them a month. And for that full month, I was having nightmares. Like, you know, I'm ruining my career. I'm going to end up like moneyless and homeless, and I'm never going to get another job, and I'm just ruining my life. And I had all of these fears. And then as soon as I got onto the AT, I like walked through the arch at Amicalola. Like there's just like peace, like a sense of peace washes over me. And I'm like, no, this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I did have a rough time with post-trail depression because I had this just amazing experience on the AT, and then I get off and I go to stay with my parents while I'm applying for jobs because I'm like, you know, I didn't have a ton of money, so I was like, let me just do the cheapest thing and go stay with my parents. And they live way out in the country outside of a small town. Like it was very isolating. And then dealing with the come down from the AT and having to apply and interview for jobs was a nightmare. Just having to do that while depressed was horrible. But another layer of that was I wanted to move to Colorado. And so I was like, okay, if I had gone back to DC, it probably would have been a little easier. I had a lot of connections there, whatever. But I was trying to move across the country to Colorado. So I was just applying for these jobs and interviewing. And luckily for me, it didn't really take that long to get hired. It took me about 3 months from when I started applying to when I was given a job offer, 3.5 months, I think, until I actually started working at the job. And so, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, for being unemployed, I think they say typically if you're unemployed to get a new job is 6 months. For me, it was only 3. So I don't think that leaving and taking that break hurt me at all, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fortunate. I guess this is a tangent big time, but I'm curious to know if you are grateful for your back issues, because it sounds like that was the catalyst for you getting into backpacking. Like it would have been very easy for you to just stay in your career, but it sounds like the fact that you made this promise to yourself, if you got healthy enough, which you did, do you now look back at that back injury with gratitude?
No. I will never look at the back injury with gratitude because it was so horrendous. Like I was just in such horrible pain for so long, and I really lost myself during that time because I couldn't do any of the things that I liked to do. Like being at work was a struggle. It was a horrible time in my life. I am grateful that it brought me to the AT for sure. And I do wonder if I would have found my way there otherwise, because I knew about the AT before that. I had an old boss. I worked in environmental education for a bit after college, and I had a boss who had hiked the AT southbound right after college. And when he was talking about it, I was like, okay, that's a crazy thing that Patrick did. Like, I wasn't interested in it. But I do wonder if I would have found it anyway, because, like, with working in movie publicity, the movie about A Walk in the Woods came out while I was working in movie publicity. I actually didn't watch the movie because I was hearing from everyone that it was terrible.
Wasn't that great?
It was bad.
But we used to get a lot of swag in that job. Like we'd have like promo closets of just free movie swag.
Yeah.
And so I think that I got a copy of A Walk in the Woods from that. I had already read it by the time that movie came out, but I might have just picked up the book anyway at that time. Who knows?
Sure. Like many things in life, book very good, movie
very bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody at work was saying it was terrible, so I was like, yeah, I think I'll skip it.
Yeah. By the way, I wanted to follow up on this. I looked it up. You were absolutely right. The 40s
is that
decade
crater
is definitely the least, at least according to our survey, which is pretty comprehensive, is by far and away the least represented. I'll send the image and we'll put this into the YouTube video, but Yeah, that's 100% correct. There's definitely a drop off after the 20s into the 30s, but the 40s is even less represented by than relative to the 50s by a significant amount.
Well, I'm going to have to go out there and represent one of these days.
Yeah.
Carry the demographic on your shoulders.
So, does that mean that you're 39 now?
No, I'm 40. I just turned 40 3 weeks ago.
Nice.
Congrats.
Happy belated.
Thank you. I made it.
Yeah, you did it.
Did you, as someone who had a complete meltdown turning 30 and went into crisis mode, did you have any midlife crisis meltdowns turning a new decade?
I think there's definitely been some introspection. But the last few weeks I've actually been sick. I had a cold right before my birthday. I had COVID right after my birthday. So I think perhaps the introspection comes more from that.
Sure.
But there is some thought about like, you know, am I living my life in a way that I want to keep living it for maybe the next decade? Like, what are some things that I want to do before, you know, like I do worry about my spine going into older age. Like once you herniate a disc, it's way more likely you'll herniate another one. And I had a spinal fusion and that puts more pressure on the other discs in your back. So there's just definitely been some thought to like, okay, one of these days I'm going to be older. I don't know how my body's going to hold up. So what do I want to do maybe in this next decade before things fall apart more?
Yeah. I definitely want to go through the chronology of your hiking career, but since we're on the subject, I think that is interesting. Knowing that, you know, obviously the hiking window is finite for everybody, and it sounds like even more so in your case with back injuries. How do you reconcile that question? Like, do you feel like you want to put more eggs in the backpacking basket or double down on your career, or what are you thinking?
Oh gosh, no. I want to put more eggs in the backpacking basket because I kind of feel at this point where I'm more worried about my body going than my mind, right? Since I've already had this horrible like physical experience. And I work a desk job. Like I could work a desk job for the next 30 years. So I'm like, if I want to take breaks to go backpacking, I mean, it's not like I'm just willy-nilly. I have a great job. Like I'm in no hurry to quit my job or lose this job. But there is a thought there where it's like, I think that I could take some extended breaks and be okay and appreciate myself later in life for having done that.
Yeah.
Makes sense. If you could, while we're just on the age topic, if you could like reflect on your 30s and having entered the backpacking world in your 30s and just like the things you did in that decade, is there advice that you would give to someone else who's approaching their 30s and has things like this like on their mind, or things that you would do differently or change? Like with all the wisdom you have now from a decade of 30s, what would you say to someone who is just in there now for the first time?
So I know that you just said you had a meltdown when you turned 30. I would say don't do that. Your 30s are amazing. It's such a great time in life because I feel like your 20s is like a little rough. You're doing all this learning. Everybody's kind of beating up on you. You're like getting used to being, you know, in a career, in a job where you're like the lowest on the totem pole, right? But I feel like you enter your 30s with a little bit more wisdom, a little bit more money, you know, you start to really realize what is important to you and kind of try to figure out what direction maybe you want your life to go. So I would just say enjoy your 30s and live in a way that is true to you. Like I'm so grateful to myself for taking that leap at 33, and everything has worked out just fine. Like my life is wonderful, and I am 100% confident that I would not be living in a way that I am now, like true to myself, living in Colorado, hiking all the time, backpacking all the time, skiing all the time, if I had not taken that leap, you know?
Yeah. I will say, because I turned 32 in March, this is the first year since I turned 18 that I did not cry about turning a new age. Because 18, I was like, oh my God, I'm an adult, sob. 19, I was like, I have only got 1 year left of being a teenager, sob. 20, I was like, I'm no longer a teenager, sobbed. 21, I was like, this is the last fun birthday, sobbed. And so on and so forth. There's a theme of every year for why I cried. But 32, I was just like, I would like to go to bed at 9, and if people don't want to hang out with me, I don't care, and I no longer like really value as heavily what other people think, and just things that seemed kind of lame in my 20s
No, but
started
what
to
a
seem
great
exciting.
place to be.
Yeah.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I'm embracing my inner curmudgeon, which is nice.
I think honestly the hardest part about getting older is that all your friends constantly complain about getting older. So I feel like my group of high school friends, for example, they're wonderful. I love them so much, but they've now been complaining for like 3 or 4 years just about how old they are and like how we're going to be elderly and all this stuff. And I'm like, guys, we're in the prime of our life. Like, enjoy your life. Do the things you want to do. Like, enjoy this time because you're never going to get it back. You're only going to get older. Like, come on.
Yeah, see, I would need you to compliment me, and you would not want me for you because I ruminate on everything.
I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that your high school friends are not like hiker trash dirtbags.
They are not hiker trash dirtbags.
Yeah.
No.
I'm assuming that also accounts for a huge part of the disparity in the way that the outlooks of life. Like they're probably
A couple of them are traveling in Tokyo right now, though.
Okay.
So
That
they're
doesn't
doing
suck.
cool stuff.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about some nitty gritty backpacking stuff. So AT 2018. I've got a few notes here for some fun stories. One being, and this is an area that Chauncey and I will be in shortly, is you got woken up by some ponies.
I did get woken up by some ponies. So when I was hiking the AT, I was in the Grayson Highlands, as you probably could have guessed, or I was right outside of the state park. And I was sleeping in a really lovely field inside of my tent. And I'm awoken at like midnight. And just a few days before this, I had been awoken in the night by a bear plodding around camp. And so I was awoken this particular time by 2 very large ponies chomping the grass directly under my tent. I'm in a whole field full of beautiful grass, and they want the grass that's directly under my tent. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is how I go. I'm going to get trampled by these ponies because apparently this is where the good grass is.
So to the extent that it's like shifting your tent wall.
Yeah, that's how I woke up, because they were moving the tent wall.
Yeah.
And I wake up and I'm like, I'm so groggy. It's like midnight and I'm like, oh gosh, what is that sound? I just hear this like chomping. And so I get my headlamp out and I get my wits about me and I'm like, oh, those are ponies right out there.
That's the cutest way to lose sleep of all time.
I'll go that way.
Yeah.
I can't wait. We're going to see them so soon.
I hope so. I mean, yes.
Oh, are you guys going to go hiking through the Grayson Highlands
gonna do
before
it.
Trail Days?
Quick little trip.
Nice.
Go pet some ponies.
I went back
No
3
petting.
years ago.
I'm not going to pet ponies.
But they come right up to
I
you.
know.
They come right up
If
to
they
you.
wake you up by making contact with you, then the contact is okay.
No, I'm
but-
starting to remember this now. It's been a while. It's been 5 years.
Yeah.
But I remember that they were licking my arms because of all the sweat on them. And I was like,
Yeah.
I can't touch you, but I want to.
And they
It's
taste
hard
like
not to
cinnamon.
pet them when they're licking your legs and arms.
Yeah.
Cute.
You mentioned previously to that, it was kind of yada, 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 that you had been woken up previously by bears.
Yeah, so just a few nights before the Grayson Highlands in Tennessee, I woke up at like 4 a.m. to a huge bear just like making the rounds around the perimeter of camp. And like he would go over, or maybe it was a she. I imagine it was a he though, because he sounded very large. Making the rounds and then going to hang out by the tree where our food bags were hanging. Just like go over there, stay there for a minute, start making the rounds around camp again. So it's not like, I mean, the bear didn't come over to my tent or anything, but it was very concerning in the moment.
That's always
Um,
a good way to lose sleep.
I would take the ponies over the bear
Yeah.
any day.
Same.
Me and Elise are talking about, just tangent, because we're doing the Teton Crest Trail in the summer.
I'm doing that this summer.
Oh, when?
Beginning of August.
Okay, we'll go right before you.
Oh,
But
okay.
we're both afraid of grizzly bears. And I saw an
Me
article
too.
the other day of ways to deter bears. And apparently if you put like crushed garlic in your tent as if they're vampires, they don't
Yeah.
like that smell.
Is that a real thing, or is this a wives' tale?
This was an article, and I like Googled some of the stuff, and it checked out. So I was texting Elise, and I was like, I'm bringing crushed garlic. I'm like doing this and that. But yeah, so I think I'm not interested in bears at my tent, but ponies, apart from if they stepped on me and like they broke a rib, I think that'd be kind of cute.
The first result when you Google crushed garlic for bears is somebody selling crushed garlic for bears.
For bears.
Yeah.
What, to feed them?
No,
Oh, okay.
I think as a deterrent. I haven't actually looked at it, but yeah, wow. garlic costs nothing. So
I
of
might
course-
have to try that. I'm doing 2 hikes in grizzly country this summer.
What is the other one?
The West Coast Trail on Vancouver Island.
Oh, yeah.
And apparently there are a lot of bears on Vancouver Island.
Huh.
Yeah, so the article that I had seen had said bleach or ammonia. So like I'm just gonna be in my tent with ammonia and then I'm gonna knock myself out. There was also the crushed garlic, and then there was like mint smell or rosemary, something like that they didn't like either.
They don't
Obviously
like
check
mint,
this.
but that attracts mice.
Take your chances, right?
Yeah, I will 100% take a mouse. I feel like all those stories about a grizzly dragging people out of their tents, what's to stop that from happening to me and that being the way I go, you know?
Yeah. Can't be too safe out there. Definitely get
Anyway, MSN.com, smells that bears hate. Is this a reputable site? I don't know. This isn't even on topic.
You've talked me into it. I might have to bring along some garlic.
I took screenshots of the article I read. I'll find it for you.
Thank you.
But there's also a note. I don't want to jump around from story to story because I feel like we don't like get as into the hiking vibe.
Wait,
but
I have to interrupt right now.
Okay.
Just before we move on from the subject. According to Gemini, which I've been using more than I'd like to admit of late, this says that no grizzlies are not deterred by garlic. In fact, bears are omnivores and may be attracted to the smell of food, including garlic. So the irony of you...
I'm looking up what I found this on.
Sorry, ask your question.
Yeah, that's my fear, is that I'm going to bring this crushed garlic to deter the bears, and it's going to be the reason I get dragged from my tent.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, the meat in there is seasoned.
I'm just going to spray bear spray around my tent like Febreze,
Yeah.
and then go to sleep and choke. How far was it into your hike that you started like making friends, finding a group that you resonated with? Like, what was that like?
On the AT, day one.
Oh.
Yeah, so I kind of started right in the middle of the bubble. I started March 20th, and I did the trail with a friend from college, and we went to like the little talk that they do at Amicalola before we started. And so we talked to a few people in there, and then we were like meeting people on the trail that day. And then by the next day, we already had another girl hiking with us, and she hiked with us for like a month. Within the first week, we had a trail family, and I just felt like I was making friends the whole time, honestly. Like, I was afraid I was going to go out there and be lonely and be bored, but that wasn't the case at all. Like, I couldn't get away from people. Like, I would get frustrated that I'd be like, I could use some alone time today, and then I just couldn't get away from people.
Yeah. What was your start date?
March 20th.
Okay. I was the 21st.
Oh, nice.
Many years prior, but yeah.
While bears love mint scents, they hate anything with a pine scent. So mint bad, pine
But
good.
they live in pine forests.
They don't like it, apparently. It would be wise to bring a bottle of pine sol or some pine oil with you. Before you
Audrey
sleep
brings up a fair point here.
before you sleep at night, spray some of your pine scented concoction all over your stuff.
What is the website?
I don't know, bearswrotethis.com.
Yeah, that seems like a scam.
Yeah, right.
Real Miss Ollie's something.
Yeah.
Spices with strong scents, some pepper spray, cinnamon.
I'm going to need a better source than somebody's cooking blog.
I just sent you all the photos.
Yeah, good. Cool. I want more AT stories. Obviously, well, let's talk about the book.
Yeah.
Where the Rhododendrons Bloom. Is there one story from the book during your hike that people have followed up with you about, like, this is something that made me laugh, made me cry? Like, what's the thing that has resonated with the readers the most?
So, I didn't really think about this too much as I was writing the book and putting it out, but something that seems to have really stuck with people is just the strong relationships and strong bonds formed on the trail. So I think probably like me, a lot of people who haven't done the AT think it's like this big wilderness experience where you're alone a lot and whatever. And at least for me, that was not the case at all. And so people have followed up and asked me like, oh, are you still in touch with this person? Are you still in touch with this person? Blah, blah, blah. And they just seemed very, very surprised about the friends that I made on the trail.
Interesting.
Yeah, we were chatting a little bit before we hit record about the question that we opined with Viking, which is, that might be a future episode, so maybe I'm foreshadowing. At what point do you stop referring to somebody by their trail name?
That was that episode, yeah.
Yeah. And Audrey mentioned that even in a group of people who are primarily not hikers, they refer to you by your trail name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my friends that I ski with, there's one other AT thru hiker in there. We met in Colorado. We didn't meet on the AT, but we did hike it the same year. And so within that group of friends, like, they all call me Glowstick. It's so funny. Every now and again, they'll call me Audrey, but for the most part, they call me Glowstick because she and I met in 2019. She was going to hike the Colorado Trail before she moved out here. And she got in touch with me because we had a friend in common from the AT. And she was like, I know you live in Colorado. I'm afraid to go hike this trail by myself. Like, would you be willing to come start it with me on a weekend, just hike with me for the first couple days? And I was like, oh, for sure, definitely. And so because it was still pretty fresh from the AT, she was calling me Glowstick, and I call her Pika. And then it just carried over when she moved here. And now we started skiing together. We now have, like, this ski friend group that we always go with, and they all call me Glowstick.
Interesting. Yeah, Garrett calls some of my friends from trail by their trail names, and part of that is because he's asked what their real names are, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, if I find them on Facebook, I'll remember, but it's like a distant faint memory, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of Rebeccas out there, but there's not too many Shitwaters out there.
Yeah.
It's easier to remember people by their trail names.
And like, it's fun because he was driving the car and Deadpool popped up on like the call thing, and he was with a friend, and the friend was like, who, like, Deadpool is calling you? And Garrett had to explain to them, like, oh, this is normal and not the movie famous Ryan Reynolds. Okay, so this is one I love. So I grew up near Warwick-ish, and so we used to go to the drive-in growing up, like, all the time for movies, and that was one of the things when I saw it was on the AT, I was super excited about, because what a great place to have as an AT stop. And you got to camp there, right?
Yeah. So wait, so you knew about the drive-in, but you didn't camp there?
No, because that was close enough to where my parents were living that I did a little glamorous thing through New York where I just slept at home every night, and I had them drop me off and pick me up every day.
Is this a popular campground for AT hikers?
No, it's a drive-in movie theater.
Yeah, okay. But you mentioned to Chance, like, she should have camped
there.
Yes.
Everyone should.
Yeah, everyone should camp there. So I never heard about it until I was, like, very close. I was in New Jersey. I was, like, very close to Warwick. And somebody I was hiking with was like, I heard a rumor that you can camp at the drive-in. And none of us knew anyone who had camped at the drive-in. But somehow I got pressured into going. I was like, I don't want to go out there if, like, it's going to be nighttime. We don't know if we can camp there. What if we get stuck in Warwick for the night? But I got talked into it by these really lovely 18-year-old boys that I hiked with for a little bit. They were so funny. And I said, no, I'm not going to go. And they were like, okay, Glowstick. And I was like,
that's a pretty sick burn, if I'm being honest.
Really good
burn. I was like, okay.
How do you recover from that?
Don't. You go to the drive-in.
Are so smart.
You go to the drive-in. So that's what we did. We were at this, like, farm store. And one of the guys in the group went and asked this girl that worked there, like, do you know if this is true? And she was like, no, but me and my sister get out of work at 6 o'clock. Like, we can drive you there if you want to wait. And we're like, okay, sure, let's go. So we go, and we want a little liquid courage before we go to the drive-in and ask them if we can camp there. So there was, like, a cidery right across the street. We go get a cider, and then we walk over.
You and the two 18-year-olds.
Well, yes, and also 3 other people who were not 18. There were a variety of ranges. We had 2 18-year-olds, 2 20-somethings, and 2 30-somethings.
There you go.
So we walk over there, and we go up to this guy who works there, and we're like, is it true that we can camp here? And he gave us shit at first and, like, pretended we were crazy. And he was like, I'm just kidding. You see that hill over there?
I love New Yorkers.
That hill, that's for you. He's like, but you can go over and wait in line behind those cars. And so we go and we're, like, standing in line behind these cars. And he's like, I'm just messing with you. You don't have to do that. You guys get in for free. Here's a radio.
Oh, shit. You get to camp there for free?
Yeah. And he's like, and there's a grocery store right there. We're not supposed to tell people about the grocery store, but we know you guys are hungry. So have at it.
Wait, he gave you a rate? Because that's the part that I was always wondering is how do you hear the movies? He gave you a radio so you could hear them?
Mm-hmm.
I thought you were just going to have to get, like, weird next to some cars. Like, people look out their side mirrors and you're, like, crawling up next to it.
Yeah, you could also get the radio on your phone. Like, one of my friends also put it on their phone. But, yeah, they had these radios to hand out to people. I don't know why, because most people are in their cars. But
I totally forgot that that's the way that audio happens at drive-in. I've only done a drive-in once, and it was in high school. I was 18.
Oh, my God. Oh, Warwick rocked. So you would go and you'd, like, fill your car with pillows and blankets, and you'd either back into the spot and pop the hatch back and like lay in there, or you'd cover the hood of your car in like a base blanket comforter, stack it with pillows, like get on the hood of your car, pull up all the blankets.
Yeah.
Coziest experience ever.
Do you remember the movie?
I don't remember the movie. No, I have no idea. I had a drive-in in my hometown, though. Actually, it's still running. Every time I go back in the summer, I still go to the drive-in.
Yeah.
I love going to the drive-in.
Yeah.
To me, a drive-in feels like vinyl. It's just something that should always exist. Like,
Yeah.
there's always a place for that.
Well, the funny part was when you were using the parts where your car would connect to whatever this radio station is and you play it through your car radio, if you didn't have the hatchback that you'd open and you were doing the sit on the hood, or you were in like the bed of a truck, you have to freaking blast the radio to hear it, and then it's still kind of quiet.
Yeah.
But like that's part of the charm.
Sure.
Um,
For us, it was just like, this is a place where high school kids go to hook up. Like,
Yeah, oh, definitely. When
Yeah.
you're in high school, for
Okay.
sure.
So-
Yeah, they
so you
used
were there
to.
with two 18-year-olds.
They used to have keg parties at my hometown one when I was in high school. Like,
Yeah.
there'd always be a keg in the back of the drive-in.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to do that anymore, though.
Well, rules are meant to be broken. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
The fact that they do that for free, I feel like we're doing a public service right now for future AT hike.
Yeah, I think if you're-
Hopefully they're still doing it, because, this was 6 years ago, but...
Yeah.
call them. You got plenty of cell reception in New York.
Yeah.
Call them.
Tell
Call
them
them and
Backpacker
ask.
Radio sent you. Audrey sent you.
Yeah, honestly, that's one thing that I agree. People didn't really talk about it too much, even though I was glamping that part. But people hadn't talked about it too much going up to it, and I think 'cause it's not the most on the way. It can be like a should I, shouldn't I? I think absolutely worth the stop.
Yeah, and then it was tough, too, because in New York, you can't hitchhike. It's illegal to hitchhike in New York. And there are actually cops in Warwick who will cruise around trying to, like, get people in trouble. And so we ended up having to take a taxi back to the trail.
Oh. See, I didn't, as someone who's a New Yorker, I did not know you can't hitchhike in New York.
Sounds like you didn't need to.
I didn't. I had parents that were willing to drive, thankfully. But
I seem to remember that being a note in AWOL's guide and just nobody listening to it.
well, I thought you're just not allowed to hitchhike anywhere. Like I thought that was just like a commonly like we're breaking this rule all around type thing.
I feel like that's a thing I should
No,
know
I
the
think
answer
it's
to.
by state. Because somebody warned us, I think, at the drive-in. They were like, yo, don't hitchhike back to the trail because there are actually cops cruising around.
Yeah.
How interesting. I know that someone that I was hiking with when I was doing the PCT got stopped by a cop when they were trying to hitchhike around Mammoth to catch up with us because we were flipping. And the cop was like, you can't hitchhike. And the guy was like, well, then do you just want to drive me where I'm going? And the cop took him. And like
Really?
they stopped and got him a burger and all
Wow.
kinds of stuff. And we were like,
that was
that's one
nice.
way to approach it.
Yeah. In all of my years doing trek stuff, I've never once heard of any hiker getting in trouble for hitchhiking. So I think it might be a law that is selectively enforced.
Yeah. Maybe it depends on the hitchhiker.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I would think a lot of cops, too, probably have better things to do with their time.
You'd
but
think so.
You'd think.
I know people that have gotten tickets for jaywalking, so
What?
Is it you?
I haven't. No, and I'm a notorious daywalker. I'll daywalk.
You are a notorious daywalker.
Freudian
Fucking
slip.
ginger.
Yeah. That's so good coming from John's. Yeah, I jaywalk. Anyways, I want to hear about you had some experience foraging on the AT.
Yeah, so I hiked with 2 people who knew a lot about mushrooms. So I was lucky in that I got to eat a lot of wild mushrooms on the trail and learn a lot about wild mushrooms on the trail.
Are we talking the full spectrum of mushrooms or just the culinary variety?
Just the culinary variety.
Because I hiked with some people that were also mushroom enthusiasts. But
What a coincidence.
I know some of those in Colorado,
Yeah,
but on
right.
the AT, it was
Yeah.
just the culinary
We
variety.
had people who we saw people on Mount Washington that like by happenstance bumped into some people on Mount Washington, and they were like, man, like we are trying to find weed, like we are doing something where we can't find any weed. And someone we were with was like, that's so funny, I've got weed and I'm trying to find mushrooms. And they were like, oh my God, no way, we have mushrooms. And they were in Mount Washington, like under the table in the cafeteria. Like one group was not hikers, it was
Yeah.
just mutual friends that bumped into us.
2 of the guys who I'd been hiking with for a long time found mushrooms in a cow patty, as one does, and I remember maybe an hour or two after they had taken them, one of them comes up to my tent, and is like, Zach, are you in there? I'm like, yeah, I'm in here. He's like, are you okay? Like, literally nothing had happened to trigger him to the fact that anything would be anything other than okay. I'm like, yeah, I'm just taking a nap. He's like, oh, okay. And he just walked off.
He was concerned about you.
Yeah, he was definitely having an experience. Okay, sorry, I sidetracked us off of your actual foraging experience.
Oh, that's okay. So we started finding morels around the Smokies. One of the most delicious things I've ever eaten in my life. And then we also, a little farther north, tried some chanterelles, some black trumpet mushrooms, lobster mushroom up in Maine. It's pretty awesome. And then, of course, you have ramps that come out in the spring down in the south, which if you guys don't know what those are, they're like, kind of like a wild onion. And then, of course, all the many blueberries and black raspberries and wild cranberries as you go up the trail. So, yeah, a lot of foraging. It was great.
I feel like every group needs, like that. This is like a Oregon Trail career. Like you need a doctor in the group. You also need somebody who can spot morels and so are you just eating these plain? Are you throwing them into dishes? How are you consuming them?
So it just depended on where we were and what we had in our packs, right? But we started trying to pack out like some salted butter from towns, like if you could get those little butter packets at restaurants, or like we look for little oil packets, like if you could get olive oil packets to cook them up in. My friend one time made a really delicious risotto with some of the wild mushrooms. Another time we found a bunch while hiking into a town. So we gathered them as we're going into this town and then like cooked them up with a bunch of butter and put them on garlic bread, like all kinds of different stuff. But
wild mushrooms are a different beast. I notoriously don't enjoy mushrooms. Like I'm the guy that will pick them off pizza. I just don't. But Jen and I went to, I'm blanking on, there's a fancy restaurant here in Golden that Grizzly is the manager of.
Oh, it starts with an A. I'll find that out right now.
Yeah, look that up. But as a nicety to me, he got us an appetizer, and literally the appetizer was just wild mushrooms. Like literally there was nothing else on the plate other than mushrooms. And the only person who doesn't like mushrooms more than me is my wife, so she didn't touch them.
It was just the two of you?
It was the two of us. It was a date night. And I felt so bad that he had gotten this like the very nice appetizer for us, and I knew that my wife was going to be zero help. So I ate the entire plate. It was actually delicious. Like, as a person that doesn't like mushrooms, I couldn't even tell you what a single one of those mushrooms were, but I enjoyed every single bite of it. I was going to eat it whether I liked it or not, just because it's very rude.
Good man.
Yeah, but genuinely very much enjoyed it. And I will still pick off mushrooms on pizza to this day. So.
Well, it's definitely different.
Totally. Yeah, that was the learning lesson for me. Is I just thought I didn't like mushrooms. Apparently, I just don't like portobello mushrooms. But,
oh, fair.
Yeah, there's other ones out there. Though the kind that make you feel good are you still looking for the restaurant?
Yeah, I'm looking through my messages with Grizzly.
Oh, this is way easier than you're making it.
Oh, okay. Make it easier.
Now I'm gonna fuck it up.
Yeah, make it. Tell me how easy it is.
Yeah. Abejas. Okay.
Abejas. I knew it started with an A.
Yeah, good job. Also have a note here that you got an amazing bout of trail magic in an unexpected place.
In an unexpected place? What did I put in those notes?
Because obviously everyone expects trail magic through like the first few hundred miles of the trail. The trail magic that you had highlighted was way further north.
Yeah, so we got some, like probably the best trail magic of the entire AT was out in the middle of nowhere in Maine. I think the town was Hanover, maybe. It was a really, really small town, and the only way to get to the town was hitching on like a dirt road.
Andover?
Andover. That's what it was. Thank you. Yes, it was Andover. And so there's a campground right by this dirt road crossing, and I'm trying to rush there to meet my friends to go into Andover. And instead, I got totally waylaid by the best trail magic. This guy who had thru-hiked several years prior had started doing it. And one year, this other guy who was there camping with his family he was just curious. And he comes up and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he learns all about the AT. And this guy is like a single dad with like 4 kids, and all of his kids are like slowly going off to college. And he's like, what's my purpose in life? Like, I've just really loved being a dad. Like, I really love taking care of people. And so he asked the guy, he's like, hey, can I start doing this trail magic with you? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. Everyone says that, though. No one ever shows up. And this other guy's like, yeah, well, I'm going to show up. And so not only does he show up, he starts growing all of this stuff in his garden, specifically for the thru-hikers, to bring to the thru-hikers every year. And so they just had the most enormous spread with all of these fresh fruits and veggies. And this guy whips up like a summer pasta primavera with all these veggies from his garden, like right in front of us. He's baked all of these pies from different fruits that he's grown.
Wow.
He makes like blueberry pancakes with these blueberries that he's grown. It was just incredible. They had so much food. They were so nice. And this guy, when I left, I ended up camping there, got dinner, camped there, had breakfast. And then when I went and left, he just like gave me the biggest hug and starts crying. He's like, I just really love doing this for people. Like, and I was like, this is the sweetest man I've ever met in my life.
You're like, you're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it's funny because people think, you know, and this is awesome too, of course, but showing up to a trail magic with like McDonald's or fast food, hikers are craving fresh fruits, fresh foods. So the fact that, yeah, he's showing up with like a fresh pasta primavera is probably the thing that you are craving the most at that exact moment.
Yeah, just all of this amazing homemade stuff. And like, clearly he made it with love too, you know?
The fact that he's growing things specifically for trail magic is next level. That's awesome. I love that.
Okay, you also, and this is one that's interesting, like the dynamic of Tramilies is an interesting topic that sometimes we get into, but sometimes we kind of graze over because it's just like people know about Tramilies. But I think there was a note about arguments over pace and miles, and I think some of that nitty-gritty, less glamorous stuff about Tramilies is exciting to talk about, because that's what oftentimes gets brushed over. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, so I felt like being in a Tramily was wonderful and sometimes terrible too. Like, it's wonderful in that you form these really strong bonds with people, and it happens way more quickly than in normal life. You know, you meet someone, and instead of being like, we should get coffee sometime, then you learn their entire life story in a day, and you start hiking with them, and you get to know them very deeply. And I think especially as adults, like, we don't spend that much time with our friends, right? So it's this crazy experience where you're spending all day, every day with your friends and camping with them and eating your meals with them and going to towns with them and making decisions with them. But it also comes with a lot of strife in that odds are not everyone in the group is going to want to be hiking at the same pace, is going to want to be going into towns as often, you know, is going to want to be camping at the same place. And so within my Tramily, for sure, we just had a lot of arguments about pace. Like, some of us wanted to take our time and smell the roses more and swim in every, like, lake and stream, and that was me. I was on that side. And then there was a guy in my group, we're no longer friends, who wanted to rush through the trail to go to a concert in Denver, you know, by Labor Day.
Just get off trail, go to the concert, and then come back to the trail.
Yeah, but he just wanted to rush us through the entire hike so that he could go to a Labor Day concert in Denver. And
kind of short-sighted.
Yeah, so it just led to a lot of arguments about pace, and I probably would have left the Tramily sooner, but so I had started the trail with a college friend, and we got along really, really well. And so we wanted to stay together, and she really wanted to stay with the Tramily. And so it was just like a whole thing where we were just arguing about pace from North Carolina to when we finally broke up in Vermont.
That's a long way.
It's a long way. And I mean, it wasn't all like strife. There was also like deep friendship and a lot of fun. And, you know, like, we all, for the most part, really loved each other, which is why the Tramily did stay together. But ultimately, after we kind of split in half in Vermont, some of us slowed down and the other half sped up. And I think I was a lot happier with that. So I guess I would just warn people that if you are in a trail family, especially on the AT where there's so many people, like you don't have to stick with people who maybe don't want to hike the trail in the same way that you do. Like you'll make other friends. You might not ever get another long trail experience. You know, you might not ever get 5 to 7 months again to hike. So you should do it in a way that is true to the way that you want to be doing it.
I know it's the most cliche thing of all time, but hike your own hike.
Yeah.
And like this
Yeah.
is the time in your life where you should be relentlessly selfish because like you don't owe anything to anybody out there. You should do the thing that makes you the most happy.
Yeah, and it was tough for me because like I quit my job to go out there. So I would get kind of angry because I'd be like, well, I left my job behind. I don't know what's going to happen with my career. And now I'm just out here following someone else's orders who's not willing to compromise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was really tough.
How I like the unglamorous side of this. Walk me through the breakup. The trail
Well-
family breakup. How does that, because it's not just the moment, right? Like there's things that stew leading up to it, and then there's the grand breakup. So walk me through like the whole demise.
Yeah, so there was a lot of, again, arguing about pace for like many states. But I also happened to get romantically involved with this person who wanted to rush to the end of the trail. And so he started being very, very hot and cold with me, and I was not all about that life. And so that finally came to a head, and I was like, no, I'm done. I'm not hiking with him anymore. And it was tough because obviously, I'm not going to tell you guys what to do to the rest of my family. I'm like,
Pick sides now.
yeah, I'm not like, you guys have to stay with me or whatever. I was like, but I'm telling you, I'm right now, on this day, I will never hike with him again.
What do you do on
I
that
am
day?
done. Well, so he had pulled this crap where he planned like a slack packing for only half the Tramily. Like they had been behind us because they had sneakily gone into a town to watch like a soccer game or something, like on TV. And so they were a little bit behind us. They were supposed to catch us in Rutland, Vermont. And so we got there the day before that they did. And then they planned a slack pack just for themselves. Like this guy planned the slack pack for them. And so we weren't exactly in the same place on trail, but my college friend Ibex was in that half of the group. And so they were going the opposite way of us on the trail because they were slack packing. And I ran into her on the trail and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm done. You want to let them know since you're with them? And so after they were done slack packing for the day, they went to the Long Trail Inn for beers. And her boyfriend was visiting on the trail at the time. So her and her boyfriend have to make this announcement over beers. Like, hey guys, so
Glowstick is breaking up with you.
Glowstick is done. I started the trail with her, so I gotta go. I gotta go back.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. Did you give her any PR tips on how to present the news?
I didn't. I was too upset in the moment, but she's not confrontational at all. So
Yeah.
I think this probably was very difficult for her actually.
Yeah.
But at least her boyfriend was there. She had the moral support. And I think mostly she was just very awkward. It was like, sorry. And then they all finished their beers and she was like, okay, bye.
Yeah.
That prompted a really question in my brain, which is, as someone with a PR background, from a PR perspective, can you give tips to the
How to break up with someone.
to the listener, because people listen to this shit on trail, right? So like chances are someone's listening who is also like, damn, I gotta get away from these people. From a PR perspective, what is the most PR appropriate way to break up with a trail family, and how would you, if you were representing them, encourage they go about this?
So I think from a PR perspective, I failed miserably myself. But hindsight's always 20/20, right?
But your goal in that moment was not to succeed. You were emotional. You didn't want to like sugarcoat it. You
Yeah,
wanted
true.
Yeah.
So I would just, I might use the cliche, like, listen, I have to hike my own hike. Like, this may be the only long trail experience I ever get. And, I just think that our goals aren't aligned. I think be direct, be kind, but be firm.
What setting would you break this news in? Like, is this when we wake up? Is this at lunch? Are we waiting till we get to a town so we can hike out?
I think I would do it in town so that you're hiking out at a different time than this other person. Because otherwise it's like you got to really speed up your pace. You got to really slow down your pace, right? Like, what if you end up at the same campsite? I would probably just stay in town for an extra day after the conversation and be like, peace out, see you never. Because you guys know, like, if someone is a day ahead of you on trail, you might never meet them. Like, you might not even know they exist, right?
Yeah.
So I'd just wait an extra day in town after you have the conversation.
Do you think it's better to be behind someone you're trail breaking up with or ahead of them? Because if I was behind someone, part of my brain thinks I'd have that ongoing dread of they might be around the corner at any time.
True. Well, I guess I'm just thinking in my situation, this guy wanted to hike faster, right?
Right. Okay, so that made sense.
Yeah, so I guess it really depends on your pace. Like, are you a more chill hiker? You want to go slow? And what's the other person? Are they faster? Are they slower?
Yeah.
But I think that's a good point.
Well, let me give you the flip scenario is if you're ahead of them, you're constantly being chased by a ghost.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like, what's the solution? I guess you have to examine your own pace.
Yeah, I think the paces is the determining factor, but I would rather be in the position where I'm in more control, which is, I think, behind. I don't know. Depends. But the idea of somebody, like, having to constantly worry, look behind your back if somebody's going to catch up with you, that's just, like, it's not a good place to be.
Would you rather, like, hard launch the breakup and be like, I need to hike by myself, we are not hiking together anymore? Or is it better to breadcrumb the person and be like, I think I'm just going to take an extra 0 and not necessarily, like, state your intentions of I'm actually breaking up with you?
So I heard stories of other tramlys breaking up or, like, you know, maybe removing a person from a tramly. And I think that if you're not direct, some people are not going to get it.
Yeah.
So I think it's better to either be direct or be very, very good at the hike and hide.
Yeah. Did you get a report on how your romantic partner took the breakup?
Have you ever seen him or talked to him since?
Oh, well, I have talked to him, but not in many years. So I hope he never listens to this podcast. But
no one does.
No one does.
He came back like a year later. So he lives in Colorado. And so after I moved here, like a year later, he came back and like apologized and like asked for another chance. And then we started hanging out again, and then he ghosted me. And so that was that. And then a few months later, he starts messaging.
Is that his way of giving payback?
Well, he's the one who was kind of mean to me in the first place, so I don't know.
Okay.
But he came back a few minutes later, started messaging me, and was like, can we ever be friends again? And I was like, I'm going to need an explanation for your behavior. And he was like, well, I was seeing someone else at the time also. And I was like, never speak to me again.
Yeah, that's not the best explanation.
I was
Sorry,
like,
but there were other people that I was humping.
yeah, like, I don't think you're a good person. Please never speak to me again.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But I came to a hiker meetup last summer.
Were we there?
You were there, but I didn't talk to you guys because I got there a little late, and he was there, and he'd never been at one that I'd been to before.
Wait, was this at the Golden Mill?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I knew about this.
You
Maybe
don't
not
have to
from
say
you.
their name, but what does their name rhyme with?
I don't remember their name. I just remember.
I was asking Audrey.
It might be something that attracts bears.
Garlic.
One of the things we talked about that attracted bears.
Mint.
Stop guessing. You guessed too much. We're going to have to cut this part. We don't want to do that. No, I remember this meetup because half of you guys were hanging out inside and half were hanging out outside. And I saw someone and I said hi to them. And they were like, we are actively avoiding the other half of this meetup.
Yeah, so that might have been part of my group because so I was there with 2 girlfriends and got there a little late. And he was there because he was friends with, there was an artist that came who was doing like dog paintings from out of state, and he's friends with her, and so they were like right in the thick of the meetup. And I got there and I was like, oh crap, like I'd never seen him at one before, like I didn't think he went to them. And so then I was like, well, I guess I can't hang out with the meetup people and tell my friends. I just sat at a table like off to the side and like didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I remember, because so she was painting Harper, Sketching Summits. Look her up. She's fantastic. I love her. And I had gone inside to refill a beer, and I saw them sitting down. I was like, you guys know we're all outside, right? And they were like, we know.
That's
Okay.
fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's rare that you encounter that kind of drama in the trail circles. But when romance gets involved, that's what happens. So not totally shocked by that either.
Before we move on, I want follow-up to the PR advice, because I think this is an important, like, follow-up to it question. let's say you do the breakup, you execute it flawlessly, you've stayed in town, you've done your part, right? What happens if you bump into them again? Because that's where my brain is going black, and I'm having this like tunnel vision, oh shit, like thoughts come to me, words come to me, like I can't function.
Yeah,
how do I act? Where do I put my hands?
If you're me, you panic.
Yeah.
And run away. Or like,
what do people do?
You know, again, from the PR standpoint, maybe you just very civilly and coolly say hello. How are you doing? I got to go over that way now. But if you're me, you panic and hide.
Greetings. Okay, so obviously it sounds like you went into this trail as a single individual. Were there other romantic encounters, or was this like the guy?
I did not have any other romantic encounters. Yeah, I mean, because we were in a Tramily until Vermont. You know, not romantically involved that whole time. But
what's it like post breakup? Is the group fractured in half? Does it dissolve completely? Like, what's the makeup?
Yeah, so there were 5 of us when we broke up. So it was 3 and 2. So I got 2 people in the breakup, and then he took the other person. And that person also wanted to finish the trail more quickly because they were on a leave of absence from work, and they were worried about finishing in a certain time frame. But as soon, like literally as this breakup was happening, we picked up another friend to join our side of the group. So then we were 4.
Yeah. So and not only did you get majority custody in the divorce, but you also adopted another.
Yeah, and I think that was the trail gods really looking out for me. They were like, don't worry, here's another friend. Yeah. This will be fun.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we ended up hiking we had a section hiker join us for 2 weeks. That was really fun. We had another 2 friends join our group in Maine. So, you know, it wasn't, we were fine. Yeah. I mean, I was really sad for a week or 2. Definitely did some crying in my tent and on the trail and everywhere, but then ultimately it was for the best. We got to slow way down. We got to hike with these other really fun people, and the pressure was taken away of like, we got to finish this trail by Labor Day, which they didn't finish by Labor Day anyway.
Poetic justice. Cool. Well, is there anything else on the AT that you'd like to touch on before we shift to the next chapter?
Nothing I can think of. I would just say, you know, I feel like we talked a lot about the anxiety of leaving a job and like making the leap to do it. I would just say if it's really, really calling to you, there's probably a reason for that, and you should go for it.
I thought it was really poignant the way that you were describing all of your anxieties before you started the AT, because I think that's, at least I can speak for myself, but I also, in my conversations with others, I think a pretty universal thing, and I think it's worth doubling down on, is you talking about like how you're throwing away your career to do this thing, and then like the moment you step on trail, just like all of that fades away and you're just peaceful and happy. I don't know if there's more to be said about it other than that. I would be happy for you to elaborate if that's the case, but I just think that's an important thing for the listener to hear, because, you know, for every person that follows through on a thru hike, there are 3 people that drop off for various reasons, and I think them psyching themselves out is a pretty common thing.
Yeah, I think humans are really adaptable. Like for myself, I've moved around a lot. I used to work a lot of seasonal jobs in my 20s. And I feel like it's really easy for us to get stuck in something, even if it's not working. Maybe that's a job, maybe that's a relationship, whatever it may be. And I think it's easy to get stuck and think like, no, I have to be doing this. I can't lose this one thing. But you find out once you're out of that thing that you are actually really adaptable, and there's a whole big world out there, and there are more jobs and there are more people to meet. And I think it's just getting over the hump of I should be going and doing this thing and going and doing it.
Yeah. Well said.
Do you think there's a way that someone can expect or prepare for or weigh the pros and cons of like your life kind of changing from that? Because like you said, you know, you want to prioritize being able to hike over like being able to focus on a career. When Zach had asked that question, might not have been your answer when you're at WWF and you're loving your career. Is there a way that someone can prepare for, not only am I leaving this job to go do this hike, but when I come back from this hike, my priorities are going to be completely different?
Yeah, I mean, I think that varies depending on different people, right? But something I'll say about that is like, you know, I was really worried that I was throwing away my career, but you take your experiences forward with you. It's not like I came back and started from scratch. Like, yes, I had to get a new job, but I still had all of the experience from working before.
Right.
But I think in terms of like your priorities shifting, you know, I was really hoping to get like a lot of clarity when I was out on the AT of like, what do I want my life to look like from here? And I think that those things, they did come, but it wasn't like I thought I was going to do a lot of deep thinking on the AT, but mostly I just was having a great time and being in a very zen-like state for the most part. Like my brain just totally shut off when I was on the AT, probably due to all the endorphins from exercise and the natural light. And so I really had to rebuild after I got off the trail, which was really hard. But I think that it does become clearer once you're off and you are like rebuilding like what you want your priorities to be. Yeah. So I didn't know. I knew I wanted to move to Colorado and be closer to wilderness, but I couldn't have predicted, you know, the big emphasis that I have put on like outdoor activities and all of that when I moved here. But I got very lucky personally in finding a job with great work-life balance, and I've stayed at that job because of it since then. So I think that you rebuild, you will rebuild, and things will become clear even if it's not directly on the trail.
I think it's a good plug for finding work in Colorado too. Maybe Chance feels differently about this, but I feel like by and large, the culture out here, like if your company's headquartered out here, you talked about work-life balance, that companies that have their headquarters in Colorado put an emphasis on that. Has that been your experience?
Yes, 100%. Like it's a whole different world from when I was in DC. Like my work-life balance is so great. When I was interviewing for this job, they asked me, like at the end of the interview, is there anything that we should know about you that we didn't ask? And I was like, well, I really want to emphasize that while I will work hard during my office hours, I am going to prioritize going hiking and camping and skiing on the weekends. Like, I just want that to be clear. And they were baffled. They were like, well, of course. Yeah. Like, yeah, why? What do you mean? Of course that's how it is.
Yeah.
And then I have friends that live here, but they have East Coast jobs, you know, since remote jobs have become a big thing. And I definitely can tell, like, they're way more stressed. They're working way longer hours. And I'm like, yo, you got to get a Colorado job. Like, people here get it.
Yeah.
Got to find a Colorado girl.
I think
the girl's your job.
my experience is slightly skewed because I'm in sales.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I don't think it's Colorado. And also my new job has been fantastic. Like, night and day, and I'm very grateful to the job that I had, but at the same time, like when it's sales and it's entry level sales and you're at the bottom of the totem pole,
sure,
it is a slog, and it's also very stressful. Like it creates stress on its own when it's like my job is 90% commission, and so if I take time off, if I take two weeks to go do the Ozark Highlands Trail or the Colorado Trail or the Muir Trail, all things that I was able to do while working, I am financially suffering in not only the weeks that I'm not there and I'm not making commission those weeks, but in the weeks that I come back and I don't have a pipeline of things that are warming up and getting close to closing because I didn't call anyone during those 2 weeks. So for me, it's like Colorado I wasn't stressed in relation to it being Colorado versus somewhere else. It was more so the nature of the job creates
Have you thought
stress.
about getting into PR?
I don't think I'd be good at it. I think I need her to tell me how to react in situations and not me tell someone else.
Sure. Good. I'm curious, did you put the AT on your resume?
I did, yeah. I put that I was blogging for the trek.
Oh, nice.
Hey!
Let's go.
Because I was like, hey, look, I'm away, but I'm still writing stuff.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I put that, then at least they'll know what I was doing and it doesn't look just like a gap in my resume. And I do a lot of writing for work, so it was related.
Yeah. Was that a conversation topic during the interview?
For sure. Yeah. I feel like every place that I interviewed asked me about it.
That's common in my experience too, talking to people. Which is why there are a lot of people that talk about, including a thru hike on a resume for all like the character building aspects of it. And maybe there's some truth to that, but in my experience, it's way more about just like, this is a really interesting conversation that people want to know. Sort of like, you walk from Georgia to Maine, tell me about that. And just like being the interesting person gets your foot in the door, or at least makes you stand out in a certain way.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
So PR approved, put your thru hike on your resume?
Yeah, PR approved.
All right. I don't have backpacker radio on my resume. Even though we've been
Really?
doing it for 6 years. No, because what they're going to do is they're going to say that's cool, and they're going to Google it, and they're going to learn that I shit in a bag a month ago. You know, and it's like, do I want them to know that? Probably not.
They're going to find out anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to Google you.
They've already put a picture of me recording the podcast in a PowerPoint that like they sent out as like a surprise. And I was like, oh my God.
You should double down on the fact that people love you more because you shit in a bag. Like, that's the real...
Yeah, you guys want to
part.
hire me because I don't need bathroom facilities.
Yeah.
You can break every OSHA rule and I'm good.
Yeah. Just
Character building too.
Yeah.
give me an aluminum foil-y lined bag. I
John's
will fill it for you.
Good to sit at a desk for 8 hours straight.
Multiple skills.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's another PR question. How would you phrase a thru hike on a resume? Are you just putting Appalachian Trail 2018, or are you putting like a little hike from Georgia to Maine, or skills gained, ability to adapt to challenges? You know, how do you frame this on a
Dumped
resume?
dude while slack packing.
Yeah. Well, he was slack packing. I had my full backpack
True,
for the
yeah,
record.
Right, important.
Well, so since I blogged for the trek, so I just put like blogger Appalachian Trail, and then I put under the description like blogged for the trek as I was hiking from Georgia to Maine, once in a lifetime experience, something like that. But I do have something in like my LinkedIn header that's like knows how to adapt, hiked from Georgia to Maine, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so before we get to the next trail, I just want to highlight that the next trail was 2022, which means we're looking at a 4-year gap here. Which is, I understand it because I had a large gap between my long treks as well, but I'm curious to know, for a lot of people, it's the next year, or sometimes, or I'd say more commonly, it's 2 years. Tell me about the 4-year gap. Why such a big stretch?
So the first year, I didn't have the money. So I had to come back. You know, I hadn't worked for 10 months when I went to do the AT, and then was looking for a job afterwards. And then I moved across the country. And then the next year was COVID. So then, everything was shut down really for a year. And then by 2021, I had gotten this new boss who was just incredible. And like my first boss at this job was not. She was asked to leave for the way she was treating people at work. And then I got this new boss who was just wonderful. And I was like, well, I really like my job. I'd like to stick around. And so then I was doing a lot of backpacking in Colorado, like I just moved here in 2019. So tons of shorter trips, especially in Colorado. Like I've hiked the 4-pass loop 3 times, like a bunch of stuff. So that was kind of keeping me satiated for the time. And then once my boss had been there for a year, I was like, so I have this hobby outside of work that I like to do. How would you like to let me take a month off to hike the Colorado Trail? And he was like, yeah, okay. And I was like, okay, I have to stay at this job forever.
Yeah. Do you encounter situations now, because I know you've developed a following on the internets where people are familiar, like do they follow you on Instagram, or that they're aware of your YouTube stuff or anything like that?
Yeah. So, well, maybe I'm misunderstanding. Like, do the people at work, or do people in the world?
Well, people in the world, I would just imagine the answer is yes, but like, does it ever cross that boundary at work where they're like, they know you as the online hiker person?
Yeah, so I work in a pretty small office of like 100 people, but I'm lucky in that I work in an office of like really nice people, like really nice, really supportive. A lot of people are into outdoor stuff. And so we have these quarterly lunches because a lot of our staff works fully remotely. And so quarterly they'll like throw a lunch for us to try to get people to come to the office and socialize and whatever. And so our last one, which was a couple months ago, I was sitting next to this guy who, like, I knew who he was, but like we hadn't really conversed much ever. And he was talking about wanting to go backpacking, get more into backpacking and like find some trails in Colorado for the summer. And I was like, oh, I'm actually really into backpacking. Like if you want some tips, like I know a lot of the trails here, like let me know what you're looking for. And he was like, oh, I know, I follow you on YouTube. And I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Is that flattering or weird or both?
No, it was flattering. And my social media is just all hiking. So I feel like it's nothing weird or nothing really work inappropriate.
Sure.
But with my book, I've had a lot of coworkers stop in and be like, I bought your book. I've been reading it. I really like it. Blah, blah, blah. But, there are a couple of things in the book that are a little more personal. And I'm like, I don't know if this is work appropriate. Like my boss told me that he bought the book and I was like, I don't know if I want my boss reading about this particular thing.
She's got 3 chapters of smut.
There was the romantic not smut, no. Like I was conscious of like I was like my family's gonna read this and like some of my coworkers might read it, but like there are definitely I do talk about having some romantic encounters, and then like I threw a rave on the trail. Me and my friend Ibex threw like a little rave in a pine grove, and so I'm like talking about that. But I wasn't like super explicit.
Is rave code for orgy or?
No. No, it's
Is it code for drugs?
It might be.
Okay.
But
by the way, you can say that on this podcast. I just talked about mushrooms.
This is a drug-friendly podcast.
Oh, okay, cool.
We're all high right now.
Okay.
You're not.
Well, there might have been some drugs, and then also we got like glow sticks and like a speaker and like some flashy things, and had this rave in a pine grove in Massachusetts, which was super fun. But I heavily alluded to what we were doing, but I was like, maybe if people don't do drugs, they might not understand.
Doing drugs?
Well, because I don't specifically say what it was, But nobody's asked me about it. Like,
so what drugs did you do?
all legal ones.
Yeah.
Wink.
A lot of NyQuil.
Yeah.
Well, that's fun. Well, if you want to share the drugs at any point, that's fine. Not actually share the drugs with us, but what drugs
Sex
you did.
fiending drugs.
If you want to share the drugs too, that's cool. No one says no on this podcast. Yeah, okay, so that makes sense. You obviously COVID happens. You were broke. You like your boss. So what leads you ultimately to the Colorado Trail? Because a lot of times it goes AT, PCT. I imagine there were a lot of trails that you were weighing in the decision.
For sure. So, I really while I was on the AT, I was like, I'm going to do the PCT next for sure. But when I moved to Colorado, I was pretty broke, and I was like kind of traumatized from being broke. And I was like, I feel like I need to get my financial shit together before I go off and do another like big trail. And I moved to Colorado in January 2019, just fell in love with Colorado. Like, I love it here so much. And so I was like, well, how do I keep working but also do another long trail? And the Colorado Trail was just like really calling to me. I was like, I want to see more of Colorado. I want to get to know it better. I want to go to all the little small towns on the Colorado Trail. And so I was like, I feel like they'll let me take a month off. And so I did it in a month, and got to just take vacation time and walk across the state, and it was glorious.
Yeah. The Colorado Trail is magical.
It's an awesome trail.
You mentioned that you've done the 4-pass loop 3 times.
I have, yeah.
Have you done both the starting in Aspen and Crested Butte, or do you start in the same spot?
Well, so when I did the 4-pass loop, I always started in Aspen, Maroon Bells Wilderness. But I've also done the hike to Crested Butte and back to Aspen separately.
Okay. I was just curious because I've done the version starting on the Crested Butte side, I should say. I was curious if you had done both, if you had a preference for that, but yeah. Have you done both directions as well?
No, I've only gone clockwise. So, and the reason for that is because I think going counterclockwise, going up the first pass counterclockwise would be horrible. So I've never wanted to reverse it.
If memory serves, I think that is probably the biggest climb going counterclockwise from the Aspen side.
Mm-hmm.
Because I did clockwise, but I started on the Crested Butte side. For people that don't know the 4-pass loop, this is nonsense.
Yeah, I'm like waiting for a moment to be like, can we have the elevator pitch first?
Yeah.
Like what it is, how long it is, like the highlights. Give me the Give me the spiel.
Yeah, so the 4-pass loop, you can start in Aspen or Crested Butte. It's like a 27-mile trail. It goes over 4 mountain passes, hence the name. And all the passes are over 12,000 feet above sea level. So it's a pretty tough 27-mile loop. There's like 7,500 feet of elevation gain, but it is spectacularly beautiful. It's just insanely, insanely beautiful. Like, I've done a ton of hiking, and it's one of the prettiest hikes I've ever done.
Yeah.
Like, it's just magical.
Yeah.
What is the best times of year to do it month-wise, and what is it like with permits?
Yeah, so you can only really do it in the summer unless you're really hardcore, I guess, and have probably avalanche training. But, you know, it's pretty high in elevation, so there's snow through beginning of July at least. And then it can, you know, it's the high mountains. It can snow any time of the year. I was caught in a snowstorm on that loop in August, one of the times that I did it. So the permitting has gotten more serious since the last time that I did it. You now need camping permits for part of the loop. I think really only in one certain zone that you would do on the 4-pass loop, which is around Snowmass Lake, which has seen just, you know, a lot of degradation from so many people going and staying at that lake and staying closer to the lake than you're supposed to and partying out there. So you have to get camping permits for that specific camping zone in Maroon Bells Wilderness. Get them on recreation.gov. I don't know exactly when, sometime in probably the winter or spring before you do the hike. But you also have to either have if you're starting in Aspen, you have to have an overnight parking permit for the time that you're going to be out there. Those are pretty competitive to get. Or you can take a bus in from Buttermilk Ski Resort, park your car at Buttermilk, take a bus in, and then take a bus out when you're done. I think it's more chill starting in Crested Butte, though. I don't think you need parking permits on that side.
Yeah, no, our intention was to start on the Aspen side, and I learned about all of the restrictions. I think we had missed, like, all the bus bookings. It had sold out, so we couldn't even do the Aspen side by the time I figured out what went into it, thus the Crested Butte side. The catch is, if you don't do well with exposure, there's one pass driving to the Crested Butte start point that is pretty hairy. It caused my mom to cry when we went back there.
Is this the one that has no shoulder, no guardrail, and it's just a cliff?
I'm sure some people listening to this will laugh at how much of it's a non-event, and then people that don't do well with exposure will probably have a panic attack. You're probably closer to the
If this is the road I'm thinking of, I've taken this road at 5 miles an hour. It is also like very thin for 2 cars, so you got to go slow when you pass another car, and the car that's on the side with the cliff obviously is the one that suffers. And I've driven on the road when I'm the car on the cliff side, like I'm driving on the right, that's where the cliff is, and like I have caused traffic jams because I'm not scaring myself to drive at a pace that makes you guys happy. I will crawl down this road at a snail's pace and have a mental breakdown and ideally not fall off this cliff.
Is it worse than Independence Pass?
I haven't done Independence Pass since I was a kid.
I have. Independence Pass, I didn't think Independence Pass was, I also did it in the middle of the night. So
that would be better, because what makes it bad is that it sometimes turns into a 1-lane road with a cliff on one side, but you have traffic coming from both ways, so that makes it really stressful.
I'm trying to find the exact point here.
It is, I'm looking it up too. This is a terrifying road. And like to the extent that sometimes I am like, oh, I should go to Telluride. Oh, I should go to Ouray. And my brain says, let's actually not go. Oh, so I don't have to go on this road.
You're thinking of the $1 Million Highway.
Is that not the same road?
That one's pretty intense.
What I'm describing is worse by a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, how can that be?
Because it's way more narrow and, it's more narrow. You're driving much slower than you are on the $1 Million Highway, and that highway is fully paved. It's like a real road. This is a dirt road.
Oh, no, I wouldn't do good.
Yeah. Do you need a 4-wheel drive?
I would say yes, but I saw vehicles out there that I think I saw a Tesla out there.
Oh, really?
So you can do it without 4-wheel drive, but man, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I'm thinking like we've gone camping sometimes where the place we've camped, there's a road you can drive down to get to this river that's really fun. I wish I could remember the place, but the road is like a switchbacks down this cliff kind of road, and I bless my friend Danielle's heart, she's been in the car with me while we've gone to meet the people that are already at the river, and I've just put the car in park and just sat there, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know." She's like, "Are you gonna drive?" "I don't know." Like, she's like, "Do you want me to drive?" And for me, part of my, like, I don't like when I don't have control. That makes it scarier. She had to drive my freaking car down this thing to the river while I walked. It was like 2 miles. I wouldn't get in the car. I wouldn't get in the car. I was just like the walk of shame. This is worse than walking home like in a guy's boxers after college. Like, you know, any of those scenarios you could dream up in your head. This is worse because cars are coming up the road and they have to slow down for you, the walker, who is just like untrusting. You know.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm trying to find this.
I'm trying to stall. God, I'm saying embarrassing things.
I want to say, just looking at the map, it's right over when you're at Nicholson Lake, which is a really small lake. You wouldn't know it unless you're actually hiking or driving by it, but I'm not entirely positive. No, it's got to be way further.
What about this, the historic hot spring loop?
Further north.
That looks scary.
It is. I've done that drive as well.
You've done this one?
Yeah.
Ooh, that does look scary.
Wait, is that the $1 million highway?
No, this one's the historic hot springs loop.
Oh, okay. No, I've not done that.
That's why I figured maybe this one's different.
Yeah.
Just guardrails. Let's put some guardrails everywhere.
Yeah.
For me.
I'm pro guardrails.
I'm pro guardrails too. It's rocks. We could put some nails in them.
I hear you have an encounter with a predator on your Colorado Trail hike.
Ooh.
I did. Oh my gosh. I saw
like a scary man or an animal?
No, an animal. An animal. Oh my gosh. I saw my first and only mountain lion so far of my life in the wilds on the Colorado Trail. I had come over Kokomo Pass.
Love that
which
pass.
is between Copper Mountain and Leadville. And my friends and I, we had kind of slacked and stayed in Breckenridge a little longer than maybe we should have. And so we were still hiking at like 7:30 p.m. And I hiked the Colorado Trail with 2 friends, but we were, spaced out, pretty spaced out.
On drugs.
Not on drugs. There were no drugs on the Colorado Trail. And so I came around this bend after having tried to outrun a thunderstorm. I was so anxious to get back below tree line, in the trees. And so finally I'm back below tree line. I come around a bend and there's an absolutely massive mountain lion just sitting in the middle of the trail, flicking its tail. And it takes one look at me and runs off into the woods, but it goes in the direction of the trail that I have to go.
No.
And there was a patch of woods, the trail bends around this patch of woods. And so that's where it went in. And so I stopped and I was like, what do I do? I'm not hiking over there, by myself where this mountain lion just went to. So I kind of stop and freak out for a minute and film a video, as you do. And I'm trying to see if I have cell phone service to see if I can call my friend Dory, who's behind me, to see how far away he is. But I have no service whatsoever. So I'm just standing there in a little bit of panic, what do I do? What do I do? And then finally I wait 10 minutes. Dory still hasn't come. He's kind of a slacker. He takes his time. And so I'm all right, I gotta go. And so I end up cutting down through a field to avoid that woodland part where the mountain lion went, and just kind of got out my pepper spray and was really watching around me and talking to myself and talking to the mountain lion and being nothing to see here, mountain lion, you don't want to eat me.
Do you carry a knife or anything besides the pepper spray?
Yeah, I do. I carry a hunting knife that my dad bought for me, but usually it's buried in my pack because I just like to sleep next to it at night.
I sleep next to mine. Did you take it out?
No, because I was I don't want to stand here longer and ruffle through my things and make myself look smaller by bending down. So I just got out my thing of pepper spray. And of course, I shared this on the internet, right? And people are you're so dumb.
You're an
that
idiot.
pepper spray is not going to do anything.
They love the taste of pepper.
The internet is so smart.
And I'm okay, but it made me feel a little bit better. And I did not get eaten by a mountain lion. So
Yeah.
who's dumb? Who's dumb?
Yeah, that for me is very scary because I wouldn't want to hike forward, and I also wouldn't want to stay put. I thinking what my brain would do. I might have hiked back to the previous town.
Well, that was uphill, so I was like, and it was 7:30 p.m. So I was like, I'm not gonna hike uphill.
Mulling by
7:30
mountain
p.m.
lion, walking uphill.
Well, you see which one won, right?
Yeah.
But so I get maybe like a quarter of a mile or so down the trail from there, and I run into this older guy who's camping. And I'm like still so hyped up. I'm like, oh my God, I just saw this mountain lion. And this guy's so calm. And he was like, well, did it eat you? And I was like, no. He's like, oh, okay. Do you think it was a male or a female? And I was like, I don't know. It was pretty big. So maybe it was a male. And he was like, oh, well, you seem okay. So.
That sounds like a mountain lion who's dressed up as a human. That sounds like a mountain lion trying to trick you. That's like, it sounds like it was a nice mountain lion. Come sit down for dinner.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Wow.
Not to backtrack, but I found it. It's Schofield Pass. It's right before Schofield
Show
Pass.
me. Do a little twirl.
You-
Oh, that's just
this
a
is-
map.
Yeah, this is a Google map.
How do we spell Schofield? For the listener.
That's the one in Crested Butte.
Yeah, so this is the route that you have to take to get. There's a few different trails that you can start at, but they will all go over Schofield Pass if memory serves.
Oh, this is how you get to that mill, that water mill that is in all those
I've still
photos.
never gone to that.
I've driven to it once, and the directions Google Maps gave me was not the right place. So good on Google Maps for gatekeeping. I spent a whole day trying to get to it.
Dang, did you ever make it?
No, I've never been there. I spent like 8 hours trying and then gave up. Okay, Colorado's deadliest trail. This is a Kyle hates hiking thumbnail.
Yeah.
Wait, what is the deadliest trail?
Apparently this. It says Colorado's deadliest trail, and there's a skull.
Oh, okay.
And there's an arrow pointing up.
The guy is a master of thumbnails. We still get comments.
He's so good. Yeah, his titles, his thumbnails, he's killing it.
When he was on, we had thank God he's a fun sport with this because he helped us make it great, but we had a photo of him crying as the thumbnail.
Well, he looks like, in all of his thumbnails, he like looks like he's about to be attacked by something.
Did we actually have the arrow pointed to him that said idiot? I think we did. I think we have an arrow pointed to him that says idiot, and it's him crying.
I mean, yeah, we had zero hand in the creation of the thumbnail for that thing, so he made himself look very unflattering.
Yeah,
he's a magician when it comes to this.
Yeah, it was really funny.
He really is.
Okay, Schofield Pass. We'll never go. Thank you.
The thing is, when you research hiking on that side, that is a footnote. Like, people don't even mention how terrifying that is. Yeah, the code is 5431. She's taking a potty break, so we'll just chat now. We can chat about that.
Thanks. We could have just not said it.
Well, I don't know, for somebody watching, they might be like, "What's going on?" That's maybe she was so turned off by the interview that she's
so
just
thoughtful.
leaving.
Yeah, she just left.
Yeah, but yeah, the thing that stuck out to me was that I was not prepared for it. Like, usually with these high exposure roads, there's plenty of chatter about it. And that was not the case for this one. And then I went back to it because I just wanted, part of it was I wanted to see if it was as bad as I had remembered. And it got my parents to cry. So
really?
Yeah. And they've done, so this makes me think that it is worse than Independence Pass because they voluntarily drive to Aspen.
I didn't even know Independence Pass was bad. And granted, I did it because I was like in my living out of my Jeep Wrangler phase of life, again, pre-hiking chance, and I wanted to drive Independence Pass is through Rocky Mountain National Park, right?
No, it's past Twin Lakes on the way to Aspen.
Oh, okay. No, I'm thinking of a different place. Because in my brain, I'm like, I know I did it at night, but it didn't feel that bad.
Yeah.
So this is definitely different.
Yeah.
Okay.
So would you put $1 Million Highway as your worst exposure road?
No, there was a time we camped in Utah that was down a canyon in like the Moab area for someone's birthday, and I was meeting the group there, and that was horrible. And every day when we went to do excursions, I had to drive up it and then back down it, and I didn't want everyone to think that I was a scared little child, which I am. So I pretended that it was fine, and I was also driving by myself, so I could. And I would just get there like 20 minutes later than them and like have hidden the fact that I was sobbing.
Yeah.
But there was one time when I first moved to Colorado, a girl that I had studied abroad with was hooking up with this guy who was big into off-roading, and he had a Jeep and I had the Jeep. And so she thought it was great. Like, oh my God, you have a Jeep too. He has a Jeep. I really like him. Let's go off-roading. So he wanted to take us on some like off-roading trail. I don't know where we were because I was so new to Colorado, but there was still snow at the top of it. And it was just drop-offs on both sides. Like, we were riding the ridges. It was insane. I was not equipped. Just because I have a Jeep doesn't mean I know what to fucking do. And there was a part where, because of the snow, my wheels locked up or something, and my car started sliding, like the Jeep started sliding backwards towards the cliff, and the brakes weren't doing anything because the wheels were locked. The emergency brake was broken because of it was an old car I bought. And
so you're in a sailboat at that point.
the car was just slipping backwards. Like, it was the one moment in my life that I've genuinely, and not just like, oh, I'm thinking about this, but genuinely thought, do I jump out the door? Like, is this the part where I jump out the door and I ditch the car? And I ended up, like, I was trying to brake. I was letting go of the brakes, letting it roll back close to the cliff, hitting it, just trying everything I could to get the brakes to work. And I just ended up putting it, I think I just floored it on the gas. Absolutely floored it and, like, got out of whatever area I was in. But that was the scariest moment I've ever had off-roading. And I wish I knew where I was. I try to forget that experience ever happened.
Yeah.
They are not together. She's married to another man, but
I'm glad we could reopen that wound.
yeah.
Okay, let's go down the trail chronology here again. Next, we've got the Foothills Trail. We recently did a full episode dedicated to that. So
I saw Chelsea.
I love
You
the
did.
Foothills Trail.
I loved it. I loved that trail.
Did you have, let me ask you this, did you have any spooky encounters by that graveyard, the graveyard on Lake Jocassee?
No spooky encounters.
Because we have had people write in. We should find one of these for the mailbag. Zach, if you have them anywhere you could pull. But remember all those emails we got after it from people saying that they also had spooky encounters at the graveyard?
I think there was one email.
There was more than one. One person heard his mom calling his name.
I think we read it in a previous podcast, didn't we?
I don't know.
Lake Jocassee,
There's
though,
several.
had the loudest frogs that I've ever heard in my life. So I wonder if some of these spooky encounters are just frogs.
Well, a lot of these lakes that they built around that area are like TVA projects and things where they flooded towns. Like, there's towns at the bottom of like on Fontana Dam, Lake Fontana. There's towns underneath it that got flooded. Lake Jocassee, there's towns underneath it that got flooded. So part of me thinks that there's some ghosty shit happening. But okay, so no scary stories there.
None.
Did you get a ride with Taz?
Yes.
What do you think about Taz?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so Taz was great, except that there were 4 of us going to do this trail and 2 people were late. And Taz did not appreciate that.
Yeah.
Taz runs a tight ship. He's on a tight schedule. He's got a lot of people he's shuttling around. And it was clear he felt a little disrespected, which I don't blame him. I was also annoyed. But Taz, he spent maybe like half the drive stewing about it, and then he spent the other half being a really amazing tour guide.
Yeah.
So I don't blame Taz for that at all. I think he's wonderful. I loved that he let us drop the ammo boxes with our
did you do it?
resupplies. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so I would say my experience was mixed, but that would be on my party. I would not put that on Taz.
Sure.
It's hard to fault him there.
Did he show you the photos of the armadillos and like all those photos he keeps in the car?
Yes,
I thought
he
that
did.
was cool.
That was great.
I didn't like the snakes. I was like, I could have done without knowing there were snakes here.
You know, I don't remember him showing us any pictures of snakes. Maybe,
I saw-
maybe he was like, you guys are late. You only get the armadillos.
Maybe. He showed me armadillos and snakes and bears and all these photos. And I was like, the armadillos are really cool.
I was really hoping to see an armadillo.
I was
but
too. I was
didn't.
looking for them at that point.
Yeah, me
Because his
too.
photo of the armadillos, it's like 3 of them in daylight, and they're mainly nocturnal. But I was like, if Taz saw them in
okay.
daylight,
Well, and
I can too.
When I was looking into the Foothills Trail, I was seeing like all these pictures that people took of armadillos.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were nocturnal because these were all pictures during the day.
Oh, see, I think they were around my tent at night, just like not outside of my tent, but I would hear some noises at times outside of my tent, and in my brain, they were all armadillos. All of them. Every noise.
I'm sure that they were.
Yeah.
What else could they have been?
That's the only option, for sure.
Okay, so what did you think of the Foothills Trail overall? What direction did you go?
I was totally obsessed with it. I loved it. I want to go back and do it again.
Same.
We started at which side? I think we started at Oconee. Which one has the lake at the end, the park with the lake?
That's
Table Rock, right? Okay, yeah. So we started at Oconee.
Oconee is like a pull-off.
Yeah. So that's where we started. That's the direction we went. And, I mean, I can't say enough things about the Foothills Trail. It's the best maintained trail I've ever been on. Those bridge builders, they obviously are very proud of what they do.
Told you they loved wood.
Best bridges I've ever seen. Could have really used some of those bridges on the Muir Trail, I thought. Get those bridge builders out there. It was just, I did it in the spring, so like mid-May, when the flowers were just starting to pop, the mountain laurel, the azaleas were coming out. It was beautiful. We saw a ton of these blue ghost fireflies, which if you guys don't know of blue ghosts, they only live in one region of the U.S. It's like around the Pisgah National Forest. And they're smaller than the normal fireflies that you see out in the wild. And instead of emitting like a yellow light, they emit like a whitish blue light, and they stay on for like a minute at a time.
That's so magical.
It was super magical. They would flood our campsites, but they're called blue ghosts because they're named after like the Confederate soldiers.
Oh.
Yeah, so only in this one region. That was super special.
Yeah. It's pretty and also spooky at the same time.
Yeah.
There's Confederate soldiers floundering about above.
They were
with a
small,
watchful
though, so you don't
eye.
have to worry about them.
Interesting. So doing it in May, did you encounter bears? Because what I noticed is all the far out comments on every campsite was bears circling the tent, bears doing this, bears doing that.
No, we did not see any bears. We didn't see any signs of bears that I recall. Like, no, we didn't. I mean, we saw a lot of like small wildlife, like tons of like frogs and snakes and interesting like insects and things like that, but nothing, no armadillos, no bears.
Any standout stories?
So, gosh, I wish I remembered what this insect is. I saw the grossest, scariest looking insect of my entire life. And it's some sort of insect that is, I think part of its life is aquatic and part of its life it flies. But it looked like the most terrifying creature that you could ever think of in your life. It had a really scary looking face. It was black. It was like 4 inches long.
Ew.
It was just like crawling on the ground. And then I learned that it eventually flies. It might have been like a Dobson fly larva. Some kind of larva, but it was really scary and really huge. And I was just horrified to learn that it flies eventually.
You're seeing lots of these, or
Just one, but that was enough.
Yeah.
It was right in the middle of the trail. It was so scary.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I have next year another trail that is popular on this podcast, the Catalina Trail, the following year.
Well, so that was last year. Yeah, so that was super fun. I had never heard of the Catalina Trail, and then I heard about it like 3 times in one day from 3 different sources. And so I took that as a sign that I should go hike it, right?
Fair.
So I think this was like February. I was dog sitting. I was like listening to a podcast, and then like just a video came on YouTube, and then I saw it on another podcast later that day. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to plan this right now. So within 24 hours, I had like booked a trip out there for April. And honestly, it was way cooler than I even could have expected. So the Catalina Trail is like 38 miles long, something like that. 30 something miles long. It's out on Santa Catalina Island off the coast of California. You have to take a ferry out there. I took a ferry from Long Beach.
You can also take a helicopter.
Did you take a helicopter?
Yeah.
What? I didn't know that was an option.
I messaged the helicopter company, and this is like one of the only times I did it, but I was like, Zach, do you think this will work? And he was like, well, let's fucking try. I messaged a helicopter company. I was like, hi, I'm an influencer.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Do you want us to make some posts for you and mention you on our podcast if you fly us private helicopter to this island?
That's incredible.
They said yes. I messaged Zach. I was like, can you fucking believe it? He was like, no.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Well done.
It was insane.
Yeah. So if you're an influencer,
I'm a peasant. I'm a peasant, so I took a ferry.
Well, we took a ferry back. Yeah. But my mindset's they could delete Instagram any day. If I can get at least one of these experiences in my life, I will absolutely be that person.
Anyway, so it's out on this island, which is really rugged. It was a lot harder than I was expecting. The trail was really steep, really rugged. They're not super into switchbacks there. But it was really green when I was out there because that part of California last spring had a really, really wet winter and spring. And so everything was super green. There were a lot of flowers.
That's cool. It was very dry when we did it, so it's interesting to hear that.
I think
they have
that's
a
the norm,
non-desert.
yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'm trying to remember where we got our water, and I'm like, I don't.
Oh,
the
just,
ocean?
There were spigots.
Yeah.
Spigots everywhere.
Yes, okay, that's right.
Yeah, so I never used my water filter one time when I was there.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you walk like inland on this island. Sometimes you're you're not really along the shore, but you're up on cliffs so you can overlook the ocean. It's super pretty. There are a bunch of bison that live on the island because they brought them in for a Western movie back in like the 40s or something, and the bison are still there.
Yeah, they just left them.
Yeah.
I heard something to the effect of the movie went over budget, so they couldn't afford to bring them back.
I hope that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Tron's hid it in a bear box, I guess a bison box.
It was coming towards me, and there was a cliff and the ocean, and Zach chose to walk towards the cliff ocean, but we learned from talking to someone that they can swim. So good luck fighting that in the
bison
water.
can swim?
Yeah.
Really?
Source talking to someone. No, I think we looked it up online.
So I hid.
Source the
I had no idea.
Yeah.
But here you are, so obviously, great decision.
I hid really good. I should have.
She took advantage of her stature.
And there are also a lot of foxes on the island. Did you guys see the foxes?
I remember being cued into this, and I saw one from afar, like, pretty early on, and I'm like, this is gonna be sick. I'm gonna see fox the entire time. That was the only fox that I saw.
Oh, I saw 4.
Really?
Yeah, 2 at night. They were coming around the campsites at 2 harbors. Like, my friend Dory and I had some beers sitting on the picnic table, and so they were coming after our beers. And then I saw 2 just like during the daytime wandering around.
I love foxes. I would have given it a beer. I'd been like, come share the bottle. I saw a rattlesnake on the dirt road.
What?
One of them. One of those
Really?
horrendous dirt road climbs. It was just in the middle of the road, and I was sweating profusely, like not appreciating it.
Wow, I wouldn't have appreciated that either.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderland Trail was after this?
Wonderland Trail. Well, after the Trans-Catalina was the Muir Trail.
Okay.
And then the Wonderland Trail.
So you did the JMT last year. It was a pretty notorious year in this year. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. I think I'm like one of the only people out there who doesn't like the JMT.
Really?
But
Do you think that
I
was
have
colored
to
by the
wonder if
weather?
that was because of the conditions.
Yeah. So what month did you do this in?
August.
And from what I know, still snow last year, yeah?
Yes, a lot.
That's crazy. So in a normal year, you're not seeing snow. I mean, at least you're not hiking in snow.
Yeah, so there was a ton of snow still on the north sides of the passes.
Yeah.
And so, like, every day on the Muir Trail, you're climbing up a high mountain pass, you're climbing down a high mountain pass. And, you know, you get up to the top of the pass, and you're like, okay, cool, I've done the hard work. Let me, like, chill for a while. No. Feet upon feet upon feet of sun-cupped, melting snow, like, trying not to break through. Like, you know, you hear stories about, in those conditions, people falling through the snow and, like, breaking their legs.
Yeah.
And it was just, like, some of those passes coming down were so treacherous. And, like, every day I was like, is this the day the trail gets me?
Yeah.
Like, am I done? And then you'd get down to, like, a flatter part of the trail. You'd get done with the steep pass. You're like, oh, I made it. Okay. You get down to the flatter part of the trail, and then you have to cross, like, so many creek and river crossings. One day, I think I counted, like, 10 where there were no bridges or anything. And then you'd run into, like, avalanche debris, like, huge fields of avalanche debris. So, to me, the JMT just felt very tedious.
Yeah. You literally hiked it in a historic year. Like,
I know, which I did, you know. I was like, maybe this is not the best year to go out and do this. But
Yeah.
I just, you know, I had wanted to do the PCT for a long time, and I just haven't wanted to leave my job again. So I'm like, finally, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go do a little piece of the PCT. I'm going to go do the JMT. And I just didn't want to wait. And I was like, well, I'll just figure it out once I'm out there. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure by August it will be fine.
Sure.
But I was punished for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess not a promising sign if you don't like the JMT, because
Well, I know.
by most accounts that is like the highlight or the top 2 highlight stretch of the entire trail.
Yeah, so that's kind of the crazy thing. Like, before I went to do the JMT, I had went and talked to my boss and asked if it might be possible this year in 2024 to take a leave of absence to go hike the PCT. And it sounded very promising. He was like, I'm going to have to take it up the line of command, but I'm very supportive. I think that you should be able to have a career and also follow your passions, whatever. I come back from the JMT and I'm like, let's hold off on that.
Yeah.
I was like, I am actually not sure if that is the right trail for me based on my feelings about the JMT.
Yeah.
So I'm still mulling it over. I'm like, what do I do next? Because I want to do another huge long trail, but I'm like, this whole time since I did the AT, I thought the PCT was my next step, and now I'm like, would I not like the PCT? I don't know.
May I recommend the PCT southbound?
Southbound, really?
So every year is different on the PCT, northbound and southbound. So I obviously can only speak to 2017 southbound, but went through in September. The weather was amazing the entire time, and that was also 2017 was also a historically high snow year, and I think we were on snow for maybe like a quarter-mile stretch near Muir Pass or something like that.
When did you start southbound?
Southbound, it was, I want to say July 13th out of Harts Pass, which is a late start date. I think the average start date in most years, or the average start date, is July 1st. So we were a little against the 8 ball in terms of timing. We lost 2 weeks, and hiking southbound on the PCT has a short weather window because you want to be through the Sierra by the end of September, because that's when things get dicey, as they do out here.
Yeah, just like in Colorado.
Yeah, exactly. So that is the most challenging part of the PCT, based on what you were saying about your AT experience, is like you want to stop and smell the roses. You're not really afforded that going southbound on the PCT unless it's a lower snow year in the Cascades, in which case you can start in the middle of June in some years, and that gives you July, August, September, 3.5 months to make it. What are we looking at? Like 1,700 miles, something like that. So like going at that pace is more manageable for sure. But that's the most tricky part about going southbound on the PCT is just.
Yeah. So I was curious because some of my AT Tramily tried to hike the PCT southbound in, I think, 2021. And they started in like mid-June, and they hit just treacherous snow in the Cascades and ended up having to like wait it out for part of the time. And my friend Moss she was like, I was on the JMT like every day. She was like, am I gonna die today?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm glad I missed out on that adventure.
Yeah. Again, I can only speak to what it's like in 1 year, but the formula that is well known for going southbound on the PCT is that you wait 2 weeks after Harts Pass hits 0 snow, and that's like the formula for which you can pass without really needing snow gear at all. There was one point, so we waited 2 weeks after Harts Pass had hit 0 snow. There was one point in Glacier Peak Wilderness where it was a little bit dicey, but like in hindsight now that I've done more snow travel, it really wasn't even that bad. So yeah, I think if you're dealing with like an average year in the Cascades, you can still have a decent window to get through the Sierra in time. But it definitely, relative to hiking the AT, is much more of a stress. Like the whip is getting cracked. You have to move.
And I think that's easier out west, personally, at least in my experience. And I've done some of these other trails faster than I maybe would have back when I did the AT. Like we did the JMT starting in the Inyo National Forest, so a little longer than the full JMT in 16 days, and did the Colorado Trail in a month. So definitely been pushing it a little more since
Yeah, 16
then.
days on the JMT through snow is quick. Were you feeling pretty whooped by the end of that?
Oh, for sure. Here's the crazy thing. When I did... I'm not a person who like loses weight easily. Like on the AT, I lost like 13 pounds. On the Colorado Trail, I lost 3 pounds. But just in 16 days on the JMT, I lost 6 pounds.
Wow.
Which I think is just a testament to like it was really tough to do it that quickly in those conditions.
Yeah.
The weight loss thing is like it's a silly beast because it's never consistent. I've found like the PCT, I lost like 30 pounds. Granted, I started fat. But the AT, I started in the best shape I've ever been in, and I gained weight.
Really?
And, like, I was
muscle?
hiking hard. I mean, it must have been. You know, like, no one told me. It was just
I
a
was
scale.
so muscular by the end of the AT.
I was pissed off. I was like, I can't wait to see the before and after. I get on the scale. I was 3 pounds heavier. I was like, motherfucker. How?
Oh my gosh.
How?
Well, on the AT, I lost like 13 pounds, but I had like 2 bouts of the stomach flu, and
Those will help.
yeah, that's actually when I lost all of the AT weight.
Yeah, it's all water weight.
Nature's Ozempic.
That's funny.
Wonderland Trail, we've talked about that quite a bit, and we're getting a little long in the tooth here. I'm going to yada that because I want to talk about the Patagonia O Circuit.
Okay. Let me just say, though, the Wonderland Trail is wonderful.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I will say about it.
That has been the consensus here. I haven't talked to anybody that doesn't like the Wonderland Trail, and almost everyone gets a bad bout of weather at some point just because you're in the Pacific Northwest. That's what happens. But yeah, Wonderland Trail is great.
Okay. We'll move on to the O Circuit. Or did you want to say something?
Oh, I was just going to say, when we do move on to this, intro it with like the stats for those of us that know nothing so that we can visualize.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to the Patagonia O Circuit. The O Circuit is a 78-mile loop in Torres del Paine National Park in Chile. It's down in Patagonia, which is a region that is shared between Chile and Argentina down in the south of those countries. So not too far from Antarctica. And first of all, it's freaking crazy beautiful. But secondly, it is like a backpacking experience, but it's kind of like a backpacking vacation because you go down there and you are like pretty out there and in this like spectacular wilderness, but you have to stay at designated campsites and refugios, which are like bunkhouses, kind of like hostels when you're out there. And so, like, everyone that's hiking it is going and staying in the same places and, like, at these campsites. Often there is a bar. Often you can buy pizza and meals, and you can get showers. Like, most of these places had hot showers. The ones that didn't had at least cold showers. And they have, like, little stores that you can get snacks in. So, it's like, it is backpacking, but it's like bougie backpacking.
Is it bougie backpacking in that someone with minimal backpacking experience can do it, or is it in any way technical? I'm looking for hikes for Garrett to do.
Yeah, no, I actually think this would be a really great beginner backpacking experience for someone who doesn't mind traveling internationally. Like, most of the people we met down there were not experienced backpackers whatsoever. A lot of people, it was their first backpacking trip. None of it was technical. There was one pass coming down. It was kind of hairy, but just because it was really icy. So we did it in their spring in November. So it was really icy coming down. I had brought my micro spikes, which I was really, really happy that I did. Actually ran into a girl who didn't have spikes or poles, and she busted her elbow. But that was the only, like, the trail itself I found to be very easy.
So December and January would be summer to do it.
Yes. Those are the busier times, which is why we went in November. But the weather is a little bit better, apparently, December, January.
Is there permits or anything to space out things during the busier time, or is it just a busy trail during those times?
So there's a smaller trail within the O Circuit called the W Trek. And I found that the W Trek was super busy. The O Circuit was busy, but it wasn't really bad. But you do have to you have to book your campsites or refugios. So it's not like a permit to do the hike. It's like you have to book your campsites and refugios in advance, and that acts as your permit, basically.
Got it. How much elevation gain is there? Like, what kind of miles are you making a day?
So within the O Circuit, you're supposed to stay at every campsite or refugio along the way. And so most of the time, like, we did it in 8 days. We did it very slowly because you just are supposed to stop at all of these places. And so we were doing like 8 to 10 or so miles a day. Our longest day was 16 miles just because that was part of the W, where you like go up an arm of the W and go to these overlooks. But I mean, I did not find the trail to be physically challenging at all.
Do you need to bring a tent? Sorry, I'm selfishly thinking I could get Garrett on this, so I have all these questions.
Well, I want to do a quick aside on that. When you say that you're supposed to stay at every refugio, like, do they require that when you're booking it, or how does what's the requirement?
Well, so we read that you do have to stay at all these places along the way, but then we talked to some people who did not stay. So I don't know if they just don't keep a strict handle on it, because it's 3 different companies that have campsites and refugios out there. And so we booked through a website where you can book from all the companies all at once. It's like Go Patagonia or something. But I think if you do them separately, like, they're maybe not keeping a strict watch on it. So I think that's how people get around it.
Got it.
Do you need to bring a tent if you're staying at all these refugios?
No. If you're staying at the refugios, you don't need to bring a tent. You can also rent tents. Like, they have tents set up out there that you can rent. It's just obviously more expensive. And so I shared a tent with my friend Pika, and we brought the tent with us. And for each of us, it cost like, I think it was like $410 for a campsite each night and 1 refugio. So if you're renting a tent, if you're staying at the refugios, it gets a lot more expensive.
So the refugios and the campsites are not the same. They're different.
Well, they're in the same place.
But one's outside and one's inside?
Yeah.
Different rates.
Got it.
Do you know what's the average nightly rate if you're staying at the refugio?
So the one that we stayed at was $100 a night. So I imagine that's typical.
Okay.
Okay. And you mentioned food. If they're selling food at these places, do you need to resupply, or do you need to even carry that much food? Like, what's the food situation since they have so much?
Yeah, so I think it depends on how much money you want to spend out there, basically. If you want to go on the cheaper side, bring all your own food. If you don't mind spending extra money, you can buy a lot of your food out there. You can actually book meals in advance, too, so you can get 3 meals a day out there. You don't have to bring any food if you don't want to. But, of course, being like regular backpackers, we brought all of our food, and then I had so much food left over because we'd be like, well, I could eat this backpacker meal, or I could get a pizza.
I could see my brain totally being like, experience the culture, as the reason to have the pizza instead. How do you manage the 3 meals a day? Are you passing a sturdy building 3 times a day, or are people hiking them out to you at lunch?
So if you get the lunches there, I think usually they give you a boxed lunch to carry for that day. So we got 1 boxed lunch. It was nothing to write home about. It was fine, but it was a fun experience to have something other than normal backpacking food.
Smart. Where do you fly into, and how do you get to the trail?
Yeah, so the easiest thing that you can do is fly to Santiago, Chile, and then take another local flight down to Puerto Natales. And then that's like a small town down in the Patagonia region. And then from there, you take a 2-hour bus ride into the park.
Oh.
And that's the easiest way. And on the way back, we took a bus, like a 5 or 6 hour bus ride over to Argentina to catch a flight to Buenos Aires because we wanted to check out Buenos Aires on the way back, which I would highly recommend because Santiago, nothing to write home about. Buenos Aires is a really cool city worth visiting.
Is it hard with visas to get into Argentina? Because my best friend studied abroad in Buenos Aires, and there was like a 90-page packet she had to fill out where she had to call me and be like, hey, they might call you to ask about my life. Please don't fuck this up. She was like, don't say anything funny. Just don't be yourself. Just give them straight answers.
No.
It seemed very strict.
No, we didn't have to do anything like that. We didn't have to get visas ahead of time or anything. We were on the bus crossing the border, and we did have to stop at a border station, and we just went in and showed our passports, and I think we filled out a 1-page form on what our plans were. And then they didn't even stamp our passport.
Oh, interesting. Did you have to show an outbound flight?
No.
Weird. Okay.
No, it wasn't strict at all.
So
they want American dollars right now. Their economy is pretty messed up, and the American dollar is very strong there, and they want American dollars in cash. So I'd be surprised if they made it difficult for Americans to get there because they want our money.
What did you think about the safety elements in both Chile? How do you say it? Chile?
Yeah, I think that's the right way to say it. The American way is
my mind
Chile,
says Chile, and I know that's not right.
In
Argentina.
In my YouTube videos, I go back and forth. I'm like, I probably sound so dumb. Sometimes I'm like Chile, sometimes I'm like Chile, but
yeah,
whatever.
that's pronunciations are my literal downfall. When I do research for mile by mile stuff I'm working on, I have a whole video where I'm just sitting there trying to say Benton Mackay. And I'm like, Mackay, Mackay. Like, I can't. Pronunciations are not with me.
Yeah, I have a hard time with that too.
But safety. Did you feel safe? Did you feel like there were some parts that were a little hairy? Like, what was it like?
The hike was very safe. So they actually have rangers that follow so because the hikers all are staying at the same campsites and refugios, there's like a time that you have to leave by each day.
Oh.
And they have rangers that are ahead of you and stay behind you, and you have to check in at these different stations, and they're just out there like hiking from one stop to another, making sure everyone is making it by the time that they're supposed to be. And like it's very structured. Like it felt very, very safe.
So these are like ridge runners of Patagonia.
Yeah, basically.
Are they cool? Like, did you chat with them?
Well, they didn't really speak much English, and I don't speak Spanish.
Yeah.
So I didn't do a lot of chatting with them, but they smiled a lot.
Okay.
They seemed really nice.
The fact that there's so much infrastructure surrounding this trail, this hike, does that take away from the wildness of the terrain at all for you?
Yeah, I think that it did a little bit, but again, it was just insanely beautiful.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was super rewarding. And, you know, I hiked the O Circuit in November. I'd hiked the Wonderland Trail in September. I had hiked the JMT in August. And so I had already last year, like, these big wilderness experiences. And so it was kind of nice, honestly, to just take a break and have, like, a little bit of a vacation while backpacking, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I would have loved for there to be less people, but I also understand that obviously down in that region, tourism is their big moneymaker, so.
Yeah. What's that one scene in Torres del Paine with like the glacial lake and the really dramatic prominent peaks? I've seen a photo of that 1,000 times and I need to see that in my life.
Yeah, so that is the Torres, that the park is named after the towers. But so we went up there on our last day, and the towers were totally socked in with snow and fog. It was such a bummer.
Yeah.
I mean, it was still super beautiful, but we didn't get, you know.
Reason to go back.
But you would see them doing this circuit?
Yeah, so it's part of the W and part of the O Circuit, but we just hit it on a bad day.
Yeah.
I just sent Garrett a text. I said I found a new trail for us.
You guys should do it.
He's going to cringe.
But here's a tip for you. Some of the campsites are already open with the individual companies, but the website that allows you to book for each company's campsites usually opens around late June. You can sign up for the newsletter, but they don't actually send it to you in your email until after it's already been open. So just get on there starting in mid-June and check every single day to see if they've opened them up yet.
Okay. So we're going to delay this episode from airing until late June.
Duh.
And then you mentioned not speaking Spanish. I also don't speak any Spanish. They bribed us with a trip to Quebec if we took French in high school.
I also took French.
I was a sucker for that. How was it traveling to Chile and through Argentina not speaking any Spanish?
So it was pretty easy in terms of like the airports and the buses and things like that. Like people did speak some English, and a lot of the signs, some of them would have English on it too, and you could kind of figure out, like, you know, I think it's a little easier to read Spanish even if you don't know any Spanish, like you pick up on some words. But my friend Pika's dad came with us. Like, we had an opening. Another AT friend was supposed to come with us. He backed out. So Pika's dad wanted to come, and we were like, okay, cool. And he spoke Spanish, and so he ended up being, like, our translator and, like, the mayor of every campsite. So he made it easy. In Santiago, I noticed not a lot of people spoke English, but my coworker had a friend who's from there. She used to live in Boulder, who my coworker set me up with, and so I got like a tour by a local when I was in Santiago. She took us to all the like cool spots for a day. And then in Buenos Aires, like everyone speaks English. Like it was very easy there.
Okay.
And also like when I was in my 20s, I went abroad a lot. Like I lived abroad. I was like traveling around a lot. And I will say that now versus then, like it's been over a decade, right? And things have gotten a lot easier with smartphones and the internet. Like you have Google Translate in your pocket. And like with one of our Airbnb hosts did not speak English. And so I was just like texting him, and he would like put his responses like into Google Translate or whatever, and we'd be like texting back and forth.
Oh, smart. I had one more. Oh, okay. So let's say this is something I can talk Garrett into and he's down to do it. And I'm going to pack my backpack. And you, having done a lot of the hikes that I've done, understand what goes into a backpack when we think long distance hiker packing a backpack. What modifications would you suggest for doing something like this where there is a bougie element to it?
Well, it depends on if you decide to stay at the campsites or the refugios, if you're bringing your own tent, if you're not. But it was pretty chilly when I was there. Like, it was pretty cold. So usually the trail opens November 1st for the year. There's too much snow and whatever, like, through their winter. So it opens around November 1st. We went around November 13th or 14th, and it was still pretty cold. So my backpack was heavier than it usually is because I brought a lot of layers. And I was really happy I did that. Like, I brought 2 puffies. I brought a big puffy vest.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, and I was wearing a lot of my clothes most of the time.
So what were the highs and lows that you were experiencing?
I didn't have internet or anything, so I don't really know. But it was snowing for part of the time that we were there. So it was definitely below freezing for part of the time. Okay. And I was not sad to be sharing a tent with my friend who was helping to keep me warm.
Yeah. Are there, is there wind chills attributing? I'm just thinking, it was...
So in the summer, it gets very, very windy, apparently.
Okay.
Like, we had some wind, but it was still spring. So we got some wind, but it wasn't anything more intense than you get normally in Colorado.
You've just shocked me with the multiple puffies. Because I feel like I've been in very cold settings, at least to me, very cold. But below freezing, certainly, and I've only had 1 puffy. So I'm would you recommend multiple puffies?
I guess it depends on how cold you run. So if you went in the time of year that I went, I liked having a puffy that I could wear while I was hiking, and then one that would be dry for camp.
Okay.
And then I would also put my puffy vest on over my puffy and then have a raincoat or whatever. And that worked really well for me.
Are you using a synthetic puffy to hike in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a fleece mid-layer or an alpaca mid-layer, any mid-layer like that underneath the puffy?
I brought my Melly, but I think I only wore it at camp.
So what's under the puffy?
A long sleeve, like a base layer.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. Pants? What'd you do for pants?
I wore hiking pants, and then occasionally I put my rain pants over them, I think.
What are hiking pants? What do you define hiking pants as?
Well, they're like those hideous pants you get at REI that are water resistant.
Okay.
Like
the ones that you could see zip off versions of?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And usually I would hike, if I'm going to wear pants, I would usually wear leggings, but I knew there was a chance it was going to be really wet.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to get technical hiking pants. I bought the pants, I think, for the Wonderland Trail, which was also pretty wet, and then brought them to Patagonia too.
Do they have a monsoon season or a notoriously wet month of the year?
So I think spring generally tends to be pretty wet. It's pretty close to the coast.
Yeah.
So I think generally it can be pretty wet. And like I said, we got snow too.
Okay.
I imagine fall would be drier, but I'm not 100% about that.
Interesting. Okay. This is good info.
Speaking of good info, do you want to reach into that bag and...
Oh my God, our Gossamer Gear question, what do we call it?
This is the Kumo question.
Yes. This is where you get to reach into my sack and pull out a ball.
Oh.
Nothing weird about that. This is Gossamer Gear. Use our code Snugglebug for 20% off shelters, and you've got an array of balls here with very good questions.
Ooh, I hope I get a good one.
Yeah, please grab one of Chauncey's balls.
All right, I'll do my best.
Be gentle.
Do I open it?
Yeah, you open it up, we read the question, and we get to enjoy it.
Okay, here's the question. What would your walk-up song be if you were entering the Olympics for a random sport?
Yep.
Ooh.
Do I have to go first?
You're the only one that goes.
Oh, you guys aren't going to answer.
Surprise.
You've probably answered this millions of times. What would my walk-up song be? Oh, I'm feeling so put on the spot.
Zach, get ready to look it up.
Yeah. I'm not plugged in, but...
Oh. Shame.
Yeah. I'll sing it.
Okay.
Assuming I know it.
We could point my speaker at it.
The problem is, I guess
I could do it on mine.
Here. I got it.
Okay.
I'm buying her time.
Yeah.
I'm being a good friend.
Yeah, we're
Thank you.
distracting.
I appreciate that. Please do some more distracting. Can I give a walk-up song that I had in college?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
if you give a story with it.
I will, of course. So I would definitely pick a different song now, but since I can't think of one off the top of my head, my walk-up song in college was Boulevard of Broken Dreams by Green Day, because my job in college was I worked for the university police, like doing patrols on campus, like locking up buildings, giving people safe walks around campus. And one time I was doing a walk of shame after a wild night out, and I had to walk by the police station, and my boss, who was a police officer, is coming out at the end of his night shift to go home as I'm walking in a tiny skirt and like last night's
Sequin dress
makeup.
and high heels.
And so we had a picnic the next day, like a company picnic. And he had told me when I ran into him, like, hey, Payne, it's okay. Don't worry about it. It happens to everybody. I won't tell anybody. And then at the company picnic, he literally did a speech about it.
Oh, what a guy.
And so then all my
awesome.
coworkers, Boulevard of Broken Dreams was popular at the time. And some of the lyrics are, I walk a lonely road, the only road that I have ever known.
Yeah.
And so that was my song for the rest of college.
This is when iPods first got the download music videos features. This was one of the first. This and Welcome to the Black Parade were two of the first music videos
songs.
on my iPod.
Good.
I like that you already had a walk-up song to choose from. You're like, can I just use
my college walk-up song, or do I have to use my
Like,
high school?
do we have those? I
Good.
love that.
Was not expecting that to yield such a good answer, but it did. It always delivers.
It always does.
Yeah.
If you want to play basketball, you could throw your egg into the course box. That's our discard pile.
Okay. No promises I'm going to make it in
That's
there, but I'll
okay.
give it a shot.
You could see that someone didn't.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
That
failed.
was bad.
Failed.
And I think that's an awesome place to put a bow on this. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us. Please let people know where to follow you on social media, where to get your book, anything that listeners of Backpacker Radio should know.
Awesome. You can find me on YouTube at Audrey Adventures. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Audie Payne. You can get my book, Where the Rhododendrons Bloom, on Amazon and Kindle. And you can visit my website at audrey-adventures.com.
And of course, all those links will be in our show notes. And if you've still got the time and the energy, we'd love for you to stick around for our Patreon episode.
I'm in.
Okay, we're going to chat about self-publishing books. We got 3 self-published authors in the room here. We can trade some war stories.
Also, just a plug for our Patreon. If you have not joined Patreon yet, we are testing some fun new things for it, where we are paying guests to stay after the interview and share some inside scoop on something they're very knowledgeable and or passionate about for Patreon listeners. So this is a great way to not only support the show, but support the guests that are coming on. And our ability, to be quite frank, to continue doing these is just based on interest. And so if no one seems to like this, then maybe we won't be able to keep doing it. But for now, we think that people like it enough where we can at least do one a month at minimum. But if you like what you're hearing and you want to support the show, a great way to do that is on Patreon. And there's no ads on those. So
No ads.
it's a great way to get some ad-free bonus content if one a week just is not enough for your fancy.
Yeah, and as little as $5 per month, which is, we don't raise with inflation. We just keep it at a flat 5. When we're doing this, when we're crusty and like 55 years old, it'll still be $5.
Yeah.
It'll be like the Costco hot dog.
Yeah. I'm going to pause the interview.
Okay. Audrey, thank you so much for this. If you want additional Audrey, please head on over to Patreon. Bye. To the trek actually, no, we'll do some foreshadowing. So people that follow you on Instagram, which are many people, already know that you have gotten engaged.
Yes.
But we're not going to talk about it. We're going to save that for the live podcast. So
Okay.
if you were thinking about skipping the live podcast, shame on you, because you're going to get the full detailing of it.
Yeah, I'm telling you guys nothing right now.
Yeah.
Not a thing.
Yeah. Okay, now to the trek propaganda. This is a little bit foreshadowing because we have a forthcoming episode where we talk about this a little bit, but apparently norovirus is a big deal on the AT this year. This is Norovirus Alert. Appalachian Trail hikers urged to stay vigilant amid outbreak by Ariella Nardizzi, who I guess I can reveal now is our newest editorial intern at the Trek. So congrats to Ariella. But the title gives away the entire thing. Apparently, norovirus is pretty horrific this year on the AT, and if you want the full detailing of that, head to the link in the show notes. That's all we'll say. We do some philosophical opining on how much you should be concerned about that in a forthcoming episode. All right, today's question of the day, of course, is this from you? Or is this from Elise?
No, this is Elise sent it to me, and I sent it to us, I think.
So
was
Elise
the order.
gets credit.
Elise gets the credit,
Okay.
yeah.
The question is, have you ever heard of storing food underwater in the backcountry? We all had a good chuckle about this, but apparently it's a thing.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
So Elise's friend sent her a text that said, "Random Q, have you heard of storing food underwater in the backcountry? I'm sure you have, but is that even a good idea?" And Elise sent that to me, I think before she answered, or maybe after she answered.
I forget, is this screenshot from Carly Moret?
I don't know who the Carly is. I wasn't going to say who it was, just because I don't know. It's not my text.
I thought I remember her saying that she's pals with Carly Moret.
Could be. I don't know.
Okay.
But I think maybe she asked me to see if I had heard of it before she just like responded fully shocked. And I thought she was fucking with me. I was like, whoever's sending you that is just like fucking with you. They're not being serious.
Yeah.
And then we Googled it. And what did you find when you Googled it? Because you're the one that did it.
There's two results. There's a backpacker article, and then Backpacking Light is a forum. So the people on Backpacking Light are very smart. There's always really good information there, but I feel bad relying on a forum as some sort of source of knowledge because there's no real barrier to entry with that. But moral of the story is with the backpacker article is apparently it is a tactic that is utilized and can be effective because it is fully, it removes odor more so than any other tactic, which I guess makes perfect sense. But the point of the article, at least according to backpacker.com, is that although you are removing the element of the scent, a curious bear will still be able to see it. And the fact that it is being seen is not going to prevent it from being moved about. So I guess if you're putting it like in something that has running water and a bear happens to be walking by and notices it and takes a swipe at it, you're running the risk of it just going downstream while you're sleeping.
Okay, interesting. Hold on. Because what I envisioned this as and why I thought it was so silly is I picture someone camping by like a pond or a lake and they're like tying I guess the food bag is heavy enough. But in my brain, they're tying like a rock to this food bag and sinking it and then walking in like knee to thigh deep in the morning and picking it up. Like
yeah.
I'm thinking it's fully submerged under like 1 to 3 feet of water.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on the specific application of it, but yeah.
A bear wouldn't fish that out, do you think?
If a bear's in water and it could see it, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm just going off of the one article that I saw about it. But I was surprised to see that this was even something utilized because it seems like more can go wrong with it than.
It seems so dumb. It's smart.
Yeah.
It seems like it's like kind of genius in a way that's really dumb.
Yeah.
I almost feel dumb not having thought of this first. But I also don't know if I would try it because. If I went to get my food and it was all waterlogged, I would then feel even more dumb.
Yeah.
So.
It is interesting. I can say with pretty good confidence that I don't think I would ever do this. It seems like the things that can go wrong with it don't make it worth the risk.
I could see it masking scents really well.
Yeah, but so this article says that you have to utilize several plastic bags to ensure that water doesn't get through your water. So like imagine trying to protect your food and in the process of doing that you just make it all waterlogged. Yeah, it's just like that's what I'm saying is maybe this is the most genius way if you go through all the necessary steps, but I'd rather just let the bear canister do its thing.
Yeah, I think all this to say, if you have ever stored your food underwater in the backcountry, write us a letter. podcast@thetrek.co. Send us a voicemail. Links in the show notes and the Instagram bio. Get in contact with us. Let us know about it. We are curious.
Yeah, I will say in the Backpacking Light thread that I saw about it, the people, or at least maybe there was one person that was saying that they utilized this, mentioned that they were doing it like in really remote parts of Alaska in heavy grizzly country.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like maybe I would normally use a bear canister, but again, my fears of grizzly bears.
Yeah.
I would eat wet food for a week to know I'm not getting dragged out of my tent by my heels at night.
Well, you're not putting your bear can in your tent.
No, I know, but they're still coming to me versus going to water.
Yeah. Well, you're supposed to, 100 yards? You're supposed to give good distance from where your bear can is to you anyways.
I'm going to throw my bear can off a cliff. I want to know fucking near me.
This is a good way to go on a diet.
The only way that Elise could have gotten me to do this hike was by telling me I wasn't going to be alone. And
Yeah.
she was like, I don't want to go near bears either,
Yeah.
so let's do it together.
Yeah, good.
I'm going to be so scared the entire time.
Yeah.
I'm going to be so scared the entire time.
I was going to say, I don't think the grizzlies are overly prominent there, but I remember when we were in Jackson, we got a hitch from a guy who said that it was his friend that got killed in like a guided hunting trip the summer previous to that by a grizzly.
What's funny is this is the only time, like as much as I've like spewed advice one way or another, I'm like, should I bring a gun?
Yeah.
Like as much as this contradicts everything I've ever thought, I'm like that scared. And
Yeah.
I know it's not going to do anything except for piss it off.
You're bringing bear spray, yeah?
Fucking 1000%.
Yeah.
I'm bringing bear spray. I'm literally going to be like sitting, I'm going to be walking with it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like I'm playing deer hunter or something.
Fun fact, there's actually a non-zero chance that I'll be doing this in July as well.
You want to do it with us?
With potentially, I think, well, you need a permit, so I have to figure out the
Yeah.
permit situation. But there's a way that you can do this without permits, not illegally. You just can't camp in the national park. But the trail actually leaves a national. So if you camp at the right point, you don't actually need a permit.
Something very comforting for me about like hiking through Washington on the PCT was I was hiking through with four guys, and my mindset was always like, call me old fashioned, but if a bear comes into camp, I'm not the one that's going to be solving this problem. And
Daddy
that
will
was
take care of
that
this.
was very reassuring. So when I say, do you want to hike with us, I mean it in terms of, do you want to get eaten?
Can you deal with the bear, please?
Yeah, would you like to
Yeah.
be our bear bait?
Yeah. No, doing the winds. I remember being very nervous about grizzlies, and then
I don't think I'll sleep.
Yeah, I don't think it's the stories of them dragging you out of your tent are not the thing. It's like when you're hiking. So the couple situations that I can think of is where like you got too close to a carcass that they were protecting.
I just think if I do get dragged out of my tent by my ankles when the time comes, piece together these bits of me being like, I don't want this.
Yeah.
And like, don't let anyone frame it in a she died doing what she loved. I didn't die doing what I loved. I wanted to live a long, happy life. I wanted to die really old in my bed. No, I did not die doing what I loved.
Yeah.
I died in fear and panic and upset. I died upset.
Yeah. They'll play this at your funeral.
Yeah. Please play this and know that this is not what I wanted, and I'm upset.
Good. Triple Crown. This is a me submission, believe it or not, based on what it's going to be. This is the Triple Crown of movies you've cried to.
Let me pull up my notes. Like everything.
So all of my examples, I think, are for movies within the last 10 years. I don't ever remember crying to a movie in my 20s, like up until my 20s.
I cry in every. Oh my God! Wait, I've got my 3. Hold on, let me write them down real quick. Oh my God, I've got my 3. It's so easy. I've got so many to choose from.
I will say I didn't have to put much time into this, but another preface is, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before. For whatever reason, I cry to movies on airplanes. And I looked into this. Apparently, other people do this too. Like, there's something about being in an airplane that makes you more prone to crying. And I'm not a nervous flyer by any stretch. I don't know what the answer is, but other people have experienced this as well. But I've cried to movies that are not appropriate to cry to in an airplane specifically.
Maybe that's how I should hide my panic.
Just say, like, I'm watching a really
Sorry,
emotional
it's my movie.
Yeah.
It's not me.
I'm going to try to go with movies that I've cried to not in an airplane, but I'll include those in my honorable mentions because I think it's funny.
Okay. For me, I've cried to everything,
Yeah.
so I'm going to go with recently.
Okay.
And this is one that we could do around 2, 3, 4, and 5 too.
Yeah.
I've got so
I'm
many
curious
choose
to know
from.
if there are any overlapping. I bet there are.
This is a really obscure 3.
Okay.
My first one.
Yeah.
Mulan.
I've never seen it.
Okay. So Mulan, her dad gets drafted to fight in this war, and he's super old. So she's like, he's going to die. So what she does, she cuts her hair, she puts on his little war outfit, and she goes to war in his name and like pretends to be his son, filling his spot. And
You're giving me another one that I've cried
there's
to.
like a total montage of her like finding her way, getting weirdly flirty with the like head guy of the army ranks who doesn't know she's a woman but like is still flirty with her, which I've always found very interesting. And finally, like, the whole thing was like she dishonored her family, right, by like going and doing this. But at the end, when she defeats the Huns and she like sees the main like leader guy, he's got this really long gray beard, and he's like, "You burned down my palace, you did this and that, da, 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 da," and he's like, "And you saved us all." And she thinks she's getting scolded, and he's like, "And you saved us all," and he bows to her, and this entire fucking city of people, like, and she thinks she's about to get reamed out. Like, this whole city sees him bow to her, and they also bow to her, and you find that, like, she got her family's honor. Like, she, like, gained all of that. Like, they all are just, like, in honor of her. I sob at that every time.
So you're not necessarily crying to, like, sad moments in movies.
No, this is, like, happy, wholesome. Like, this is just, like, the fact that, like, what she must feel in this moment is so wholesome. I break down every time in tears.
Are most of your cries tears of joy?
No, I cry at everything.
Okay.
Everything.
Okay.
But this one particularly, Mulan, at that part where she's on those stairs, anyone who's watched it will know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When that guy with the beard is like,
is this a Pixar movie?
You burned my castle. It's Disney. You burned my castle. You faked being in the. You did all this shit. And most importantly, you saved us all.
Yeah.
And they all bow. And I'm like, oh, waterworks.
Yeah.
I can't stop.
I'm going to go with the one that I was most nervous that you would take, and that is I Am Legend. And that
Oh, I haven't watched that. I won't watch it.
Okay.
I refuse. No, thank you.
You can probably guess what I'm going to say, but this is an apocalyptic movie where Will Smith is in an environment where everybody is zombies, and like his only companion is his dog. Mm-hmm. And it's been a long time since I've seen it, so I don't remember the exact plot, but like his best friend, like his close confidant, his dog saves him in this one scene from a zombie, but the zombie gets like a small nick on the dog, and he's holding his dog.
No.
And he can, like, he notices that the fang on the dog starts to grow longer, and the dog goes from dying to like looking up at him, and it just cuts away to Will Smith. Like, he turns his head away as his dog is laying in his lap, and he chokes his dog to death.
No, that's what happens?
Yeah, he has
to.
to.
All I heard is the dog dies, and I've, like, literally never wanted to hear another word about this.
It's his best...
He had to choke the dog?
It's his only companion
oh my God,
in this environment.
I'm going to cry right now.
And he has to choke his own... It's a German Shepherd, which especially...
I would let Harper eat me.
I kind of felt the same ways. Like if this is the world that I have to live in, I would rather just.
If I have to choose between choking Harper and Harper zombifying me, I'm zombie.
No, I bawled my fucking dick off.
Oh no,
it is bad. It is really bad.
I don't like that at all.
Yeah, and since having kids, I definitely cry at a lot more movies. This one might be comical. I'm not sure. Have you seen Avatar 2?
Yes.
I shouldn't be laughing.
Yes.
But this is a scene where he loses his son dies, and now any scene where like.
Oh yeah, that one was sad.
This was 2021. I want to say.
No. I thought this was like last year.
Was it that?
It was sooner. Had to have been. Time can't pass that fast.
22.
Okay, compromise.
Okay. But yeah. There's not much to say about it other than the fact that like watching your kid go now hits me in a way more profound way. It's made me so soft. And Jen and I both saw it in IMAX in the theater, and we were both like, she was crying harder than I was. Usually, historically, I'm not a crier, but I was definitely waterworks in that situation.
Okay. I love a sports movie with an underdog. Maybe all of mine are going to be wholesome moments, actually, for this, now that I'm thinking about it. I love a sports movie with an underdog. We just watched the movie The Greatest Game Ever Played. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh, my God. Go home and watch it. It's a golf movie. Not what you would think would capture my fancy. It's a golf movie. This guy grows up in poverty, lives across from a golf.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, it's Shia LaBeouf. What's funny is 20 minutes in the movie, I was like, Garrett, the only weird thing about this movie to me is that guy just looks like Shia LaBeouf. And he was like, that is Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
So Shia LaBeouf is like this guy. His dad is not supportive of him playing golf, like wants him to make an honest living. But he's like really good. He keeps getting invited to these amateur leagues. He lives across from this golf place. And he doesn't have anyone to caddy for him. So this small, like his friend was supposed to, but his friend got forced to go to school or something the day he was supposed to show up. So this little kid like is caddying for him. Case in point, like long things happen throughout the movie. Guy ends up getting invited to like some prestigious golf thing, like multi-day. I don't know. They just had one.
The Masters.
I think that might have been what it was. Details. Anyway, so he ends up saying yes, he'll do it as like the amateur person, and this little kid is being his caddy. And the club that like is hosting it, like he goes into this building and the kid is by the fireplace crying. And the people at the club are telling him the only person allowed to talk to you while you're playing is your caddy. You need to have someone that can actually give you good advice. And he was like, what are you talking about? And they were like, we'll pay the kid. Like, he'll have money to bring his family. It's fine. Just take one of our people. And he's like, you talk to him without talking to me first. He goes up to the caddy kid, and the kid's sobbing. And he's like, don't worry. Like, nothing's wrong. And he goes up to these, like, bougie club people and is like, I'm not taking your caddy. This kid is caddying for me. And don't you ever fucking talk to my caddy without me again. And the kid's just so happy. I started crying there. There's still like an hour left in the movie at the point that I'm crying. This is last week. But basically, he ends up winning and like overcomes all this adversity. The kid actually gave him fire advice, like talked him out of falling into a trap with one of the like hits or whatever you call it in golf. And they hoist them both up, and people are just like handing them money. And he's like telling them to pass it to the kid. And you see his unsupportive dad standing there holding out like a dollar bill or something to him too. And the waterworks just kept flowing. It was drawn out. Like there was a lot of tension, and I don't like conflict in my movies. There was a lot of that. But I spent a good amount of time crying. Yeah. And this was last week. So that's my recent one.
Good.
I've got honorable mentions.
Wait, did you do 3?
No, that was 2. Because I went first. I've got honorable mentions. So do I go wholesome or do I go sad? That's the question. I think my honorable mentions, I'll do all of my Triple Crowns as wholesome cries, and then my honorable mentions are 3 that will be sad cries. Okay. Third one, Miracle. I thought that was a Wayne Gretzky documentary until 2 years ago. Yeah. Garrett, big hockey guy, had me watch it. Oh my God. And it's a true story.
Did you cry during his speech?
I think I started crying when he was blowing the whistle saying again, and they were collapsing from running so many laps. And then the guy, he was like, who do you play for? And the guy was like, finally realized, and he was like, the United States of America. I think that's where I started crying. And I think I continued crying through the end of the movie just because I thought we were getting a Wayne Gretzky documentary, and I got this wholesome underdog like taking down the Russians Olympic story. It was phenomenal. I've seen it like 7 times since. Anytime he asks what I want to watch Miracle.
Disney is masterful at pulling it.
And then the guy and the announcer is like, do you believe in miracles? Oh my God.
Yeah.
I can't. Wow. A fantastic movie. Great for a wholesome sob.
I don't think I've seen that one actually.
Shut up.
I know the story, but I haven't seen the movie.
Oh my God. Watch the movie. It's so good. Yeah. It's so good. I'm going to go home and watch it.
My last one, I'm torn between a few. I'm going to go with the one that I cried at the most recently. And I think I've talked about this on the podcast, not me crying, but how much I enjoy the movie. Interstellar.
Okay. What made you cry?
The scene where he's trapped in the wormhole and he's screaming at his daughter. He's like, don't go. The fact that he's abandoned from his daughter.
Is this post kids?
Yeah. No, definitely. And it was like, I think I didn't cry the first 8 times I saw the movie, and it was the most recent time that I was like horrifically sick. I've just turned into the biggest fucking softie. Him yelling at his daughter, telling himself in the past to not leave her. It was just like, I couldn't take it. And yeah, that's probably the movie that I've seen the most number of times. So the fact that I cried to it was shocking and a little embarrassing.
Yeah. No, I could see that though. That makes sense.
Yeah. All the kid stuff just fucking destroys me.
Okay, honorable mentions. Yeah. The Titanic.
Okay.
The first time I saw it, and I am an adamant supporter of they both could have fit on this wood board.
Yeah.
The fact that she was so, quote unquote, in love with him and was willing to let him just shiver there in the water, I was sobbing with rage. Like, you don't want to move. You don't even want to try.
Yeah.
You don't even want to see if he could fit. Like, okay, fine. I fell off. You don't fit. Let me just get on. But at least we tried. You're not even going to try that. You're just going to watch him freeze and then be like, oh my God, he froze. After all of that, it like so sad.
Is that still the highest grossing movie? I know all the stuff gets skewed because inflation and whatnot, but I think inflation adjusted, that might still be the highest grossing movie of all time. I could be wrong on that.
I have no stats. But also, like, after that happens and they go and it flashes back to the old lady and then she goes to lay down in bed and then it gives that, like, dreamlike picture of her going up the stairs in the Titanic and Leo's just, like, standing there waiting for her by the clock. Waterworks.
Yeah.
Done.
Titanic is number 3. I don't think you'll guess number 1.
For what?
Highest grossing movie of all time. I'll give you a hint. This is a
Isn't
movie.
it recent?
No.
Oh.
The exact opposite. It's almost 100 years old.
No, I don't know. What is it?
Gone with the Wind. 1939.
Okay.
Avatar's number 2.
Any honorable mentions from you before I say my other two?
Yeah. Just in your spiel, I forget what you said that spurred this. But The Patriot, that was an early cry for me.
Okay.
Watching him lose. Does he lose 2 or 3 of his sons in that movie?
I don't think I've seen it.
No? Oh, Patriot
Should I watch it?
is so good. The Patriot is so... It's a little loose in the historical...
Is it a football movie? It reminds...
No.
The name makes me
The
think of a football
Patriot
movie.
is about the Revolutionary War.
Oh.
Yeah. And one of the best bad guys of all time. Like, literally one of the most hateable faces. Like,
Watch
I don't
The
think this guy
Patriot.
could get a role as a likable character based on how good of a bad guy he was. But is it Heath Graham? Is that his name? The guy who was the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Oh, Heath Ledger?
Heath Ledger, yeah.
Is he in it?
He's in it. So he's Mel Gibson's oldest son, and the way that he dies is very dramatic, and you are positive that Heath Ledger is about to kill the bad guy.
No, wait, don't tell me. I'm going to watch it when
Yeah.
I go home. Stop.
I'll just say
Stop.
I'll just say you're probably gonna cry.
I'm going to watch it tonight. Well, I've been reading for Mile by Mile. I'm up to the Revolution. So I've just, like, immensely immersed
Yeah.
myself in revolutionary stuff.
Yeah, there's not a ton of other than the United States winning. I don't think it's that historically accurate.
Fine. Just don't tell me about the part where I'm going
And
to
it
cry.
ends at
I
Yorktown.
hate spoilers.
Yeah.
Up. I've never cried faster in a movie.
I've heard the beginning of that as a.
Have you not seen it?
No.
Oh my God. I saw it in theaters and I was expecting wholesome Pixar. And literally in the first 5 minutes, I was sobbing. So
I think that's Pixar's most tearjerker movie, from what I understand.
it wins most unexpected cry from me. And it also wins quickest cry. I
Is
don't
it
think.
that the old guy loses his wife?
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't have statistics, but I will put money on the fact I have not cried faster in a movie.
Sure.
Other than this one.
What would you say is the saddest Disney movie?
Fox and the Hound.
For me, it's Lion King.
No, I don't like Mufasa can fall. That's fine, whatever. Her leaving Fox and like having to tell him like you're and like driving off and looking back and him sitting there sad. If that was Harper, I'd put a knife through my face.
But not only does Mufasa die, but Simba is led to believe that he's the reason that he died. Like, that is so bad.
But you get a character arc. Like I feel like Fox
Yeah.
and the Hound ends with that, doesn't it? I
I've
haven't
never
watched.
seen it.
Oh my God, I haven't watched it in a long time
Yeah.
because I'm not mentally stable enough to. It's just not good for my overall being.
Yeah. I'll give 2 quick ones because these both fall under the I cried while flying, and these are not sad movies.
Okay.
And totally inappropriate to cry to. One is Apollo 2.
Why did you cry in that?
I don't even remember. That's the funny thing, is I think it was something about him missing his dad. All this stuff is parent related. I have a good relationship with both my parents, for what it's worth. This is just now me having kids has just made me so soft. I don't even remember the exact moment, but I think he was missing. You've seen the Rocky movies, right?
Yes. Asterisks.
So
Have I paid attention?
Yeah. So in Rocky 2, is it 2 and 3 or 1 and 2? I don't remember. I think it's 2 and 3. no, in 1 he loses to Apollo Creed. In 2 he beats Apollo Creed, and Apollo ends up being a likable character. So the sequel movies is Rocky training Apollo's son, who's Michael B. Jordan, and I don't even remember what.
That's the Creed movies.
Creed. What I said Apollo 2? I
Yeah,
meant
there's Creed 1, 2, and 3. Those I've seen.
Okay.
Those I all cried in.
I saw Creed 2. That made me cry.
Which part? Which part?
I don't even remember. I just remember crying and being like, this is not that sad, but I'm crying.
I cried in the third Creed where the guy that was supposed to be his friend ended up like wronging him. That part made me cry. His friend came out of prison and he was like kind of helping him out, and the guy kind of turned on him and was like, I'm going to be a better fighter. Just the betrayal made me cry.
Yeah. The other totally inappropriate one that I cried to was another parent-related thing, Catch Me If You Can. It's not even that sad, but there's one point where he wants Leonardo DiCaprio wants his dad's approval, Christopher Walken, so bad. And no, he wants his parents to get back together, and he realizes that it's not going to happen, and that made me cry.
Sorry, slightly distracted. I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. I'll say this in order so that my thoughts are organized. My third Triple Crown is The Notebook. Obviously, like towards the end when she remembers him and then she forgets him, crying. Yeah. And then when they're laying in bed and like the arm, I lose water weight over that movie. Yeah. But I was looking up Disney movies because I'm like, there's more than Mulan that I've wholesome cried to. And then I saw the category sports movie on Disney, Invincible. Another great one.
What's that one?
That one's the guy where the Eagles do open tryouts, and this like bartender who's like struggling to get by tries out and makes the team and like does a great job. Overcomes adversity, obviously, but that's a great movie.
Is that Marky Mark?
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Cried during that one. The only real like wholesome sports movie I don't like is Moneyball because I didn't like the ending, and I get it's a true story and that's just like how life ends sometimes. I didn't like it, but what just bugged me out is as I'm scrolling through sports movie on Disney, I see 3 Bills helmets. There's an hour, 40-minute long movie from 2015 on Disney Plus called The Four Falls of Buffalo.
Is this just a ESPN 30 for 30 about?
It's Disney Plus. It's about the 4 times that they went to the Super Bowl and lost.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to have to watch it.
Were you old enough to remember?
No, I was born in 92.
Okay. And the last one was what, 94?
Yeah, I was born in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, The Notebook, cry fest.
My last honorable mention is another dog one. And I will say that you can watch this without the threat of crying, I think, is the movie. It's just called Dog. It's with Channing Tatum. And so there's this guy, Channing Tatum, one of the guys that he went to war with, ended up dying. And this Belgian Malinois, this is part of the reason why it made me cry, is this dog is very similar to Sierra. He ends up having to transport his dog down to his funeral, and like the whole story arc is that this is a very problematic dog and it's acting up because it misses its owner. But there's a scene where he brings the dog to the funeral and the dog sprints out of the car and just lays by this guy's casket and just like,
I don't think I can handle those. I don't think I can watch those at all.
The fact that this dog looks very similar to my dog, and Sierra is so incredibly loyal. Like I remember when I was recovering from my ACL tear, we had to separate her. We had to put up a baby gate between her and I because we just couldn't have anything go wrong. Like if she would have laid on me after surgery, that could have fucked up the surgery. So she laid at the edge of the baby gate for the entire time that she wasn't allowed to be next to me. So like that memory mixed with this dog sprinting over to this guy's casket and just like laying there, and I think it makes like a whimpering sound, that like I melted down on that. But the dog doesn't die in the movie. It's not supposed to be, I think, the saddest movie of all time, but that scene destroyed me.
I could cry right now.
Yeah.
I hate that. I hate even hearing about Sierra not being able to go near you.
The I Am Legend one is way worse, though.
I'll never watch that movie.
He has to strangle his dog in his arms.
If I ever lose, like this is worse than like how we were doing that bet over what would make me tattoo a horse with a lightning bolt on my ass. This would be the worst thing to put on the stakes. Yeah. Is like you have to watch this movie if you lose.
I wonder how this ranks in terms of tearjerker movies, the I Am Legend, because that scene is just like, I was one of those where like I was doing the weird cry breathing, like like that sort of
No.
thing. I couldn't handle it.
I'd have to sleep with the lights on. Okay. Do we want to read this note I put?
We are apparently saving that for the live episode.
Oh, that's smart. Okay.
So another foreshadowing. You guys definitely have to listen to that episode.
This one I love. This is an idea that we came up with a while back based on the 1-star National Park reviews.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's populated for this, I think, is really cool.
I did this right before the
Did
recording.
you?
Yeah.
I thought this was Rachel.
No.
I hate to compliment you, but
Yeah,
okay.
I did a good job.
Okay, 1-star trail reviews.
Yeah. We'll just alternate these.
Yeah,
This one's for
self-explanatory.
This one's so if you Google Appalachian Trail, you know how if you Google like a restaurant, it'll take you to the restaurant listing on Google.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with the AT, and it's got tens of thousands of reviews, and some of them are 1 stars, and some of them are very funny. So
Yeah.
you kick it off.
Okay, this is from Elphys Levi. He's a local guide. Local to where? 1 star. Slept along the trail one night only to wake up in the middle of the night to some dark figure standing over me. I bolted the F out of there, but the sicko managed to track me 100 miles over 7 days. Long story short, I got out, but I ain't going there again.
This one is from Zachary, spelt in a very strange way, Tomco TV. 1-star review. This trail is too long. From Maine to Georgia is too long. I would never, ever, ever hike on that trail.
7 exclamation points. Also a local guide
Yeah.
to where. This one's from Rishi Kurana. 1 star. Don't like it. I have to go outside. These are great.
Who are the people that take time out of their day to give a 1-star
They're
thing?
that disgusted with it, they have to go home and type it up.
And the people who haven't even been on the trail.
Oh, I love it so much.
Yeah. We got a listener voicemail.
Love these.
If you guys want to leave us a voicemail, the link will be available in the show notes, or go to our Instagram and then our link tree.
Or backpackerradio.com.
That's right. That was awesome. Thank
That
you,
was
Haley.
great. Thank you.
Do you have a guest?
Yeah, which is so weird for 8:30 p.m.
Yeah, it's a little late. Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
I will say that I forgot what we promised. We said we're going to give someone a signed book.
Yeah, if they thought of our subtitle.
Yeah, or any part of the title. And someone did submit something that for me right now is the front runner for the subtitle.
What was it? It was one that I really felt gross about.
I want to keep it bottled up because right now it is the front runner.
You've told me though.
Yeah, I'll
it's
say
the one that I got grossed out by.
Yeah, it is very clever, and it was exactly what I was asking for. I'll tell you what it is once we're done recording.
Yeah, type it.
I want to encourage people to continue to submit.
Please do. I'm going to encourage you to submit. It's like the version of moist, but a different word where just like you hate to hear it.
I'm texting you right now.
And it was one of those where I like cringed reading it, and I was like, this is good, but I like also am cringy. Oh yeah, that was the word.
It is very clever.
It's really clever. If you can, guys, just keep sending them.
Yeah. So somebody listening to this will know that they're potentially playing a part in our forthcoming book project.
And making me cringe.
Yeah.
Yes. Mailbag.
Take it.
Really enjoyed the podcast. No, sorry. Really enjoying, present tense, the podcast. It's especially wistfully fun for people who can't thru-hike to live vicariously through others' adventures. Had a fun, weird experience when listening the other day. Had my earbuds in when Chauncey sneezed. I reflexively said, "Bless you," which got some weird looks, but I guess they must have assumed I was on the phone in conversation and not talking. So that's funny. There is a false one-way familiarity in listening to conversational podcasts. Hope there is a season of trail correspondence this year too. I'd be fine with a format change. Maybe follow 3 people more closely with more free-form format for a more intimate and thorough experience for the listener. From Brian, parentheses, section hiker. That's really funny. I'm sorry.
The responding to a podcast is, I'm pretty sure I've done that myself.
Yeah, I have too.
But it is funny for somebody to be doing it to us.
Yeah.
Shout out, Brian. Thank you for that note. Made me laugh.
Oh, this comes with pictures of dogs.
Yeah, is this a 5? This must have been an email.
5-star review.
Hey, I listen on Spotify, so I gave you stars, but I can't leave an actual written review. You guys are my favorite podcast. I look forward to Mondays, a tough feat, now that I am all caught up and can't listen 24/7. The guests are top notch, and your banter with each other is always entertaining. We got a new puppy about a year ago, and I had a backlog of your podcast at the time, so I was listening to you guys in the background pretty much all the time. Our puppy had separation anxiety, and after trying different methods to help him through it for the first 3 to 4 months of having him, I decided to throw your podcast on in the background when I left. It worked, so my puppy is now an avid listener, and you guys keep him company when I can't. Also, pictures of the pup as a baby and now adult. I think he's the cutest, and hope he makes you all smile, since you guys make me smile while listening. That is an adorable puppy. Holy
And it's
shit.
also one of the best compliments is that our podcast makes this puppy not have separation anxiety.
I know all puppies are cute, and all puppies are cute. That's a fact. This is the cutest puppy. It looks like a stuffed animal.
This is one of those like little teddy bears that you get at like the checkout of a craft store. Those little tiny itty bitty ones that are like you super glue to things.
Is this an Akita? What kind of dog is this?
It looks like, what were they called? A Samoa? Samoed? Samo. Look up Samo something.
I think
Samoed?
that's what it looks like, right?
Maybe. Look up Samoed.
Oh, I'm going to get a cookie.
Samoed, maybe? Put dog after just to make sure.
Yeah, it looks like that too.
Yeah. There's a good boy.
But we'll have to find a way to throw this photo into the show notes, because that is the most adorable as an adult as well, but that puppy is out of control. Holy shit.
Yeah.
You can't walk down the street
But
with that
even
thing.
the golden, look at the little eyes, and he looks so nice. And then over here, he looks so wise and like he's been through another puppy's puppy phase.
Golden puppies are also very cute. All puppies are cute, but yeah. Thanks for all the episodes, Emily, and your biggest pup fans, Rudy and Yoshi.
I love that so much.
A super big thank you to our Chuck Norris Award winners on Patreon. That is Alex and Misty with Navigators Crafting, Andrew, Austin McDaniel, Austin Ford, Brad and Blair from 13 Adventures, Brent Stenberg, Brian Alsop, Christopher Marshburn, Coach for Marion Outdoors. Christopher Marshburn was the first one to buy our hat, by the way.
Oh, love him.
So he's rocking it out on trail. Coach for Marion Outdoors, bless you. Dane.
Ish.
Derek Cook, Eric Casper.
The Friendly Ghost.
Eric Hoffman, Greg Knight, Greg McDaniel. Jason Snaler,
Bailey Nower,
Liz Seeger, Patrick Ciencialo, Spam, Timothy Hahn,
Solo,
and Tracy Trigger. You can follow us at Backpacker Radio on Instagram and TikTok, at Backpacker Pod on X, Facebook.com/Backpacker Radio. You can follow Chauncey.
You can find me on Instagram at Juliana_Chauncey, on YouTube at Juliana Chauncey. And funnest of all is I am doing a little service where I edit your hiking videos for you if you're on trail and don't want to do it, or if you're just like at home with a backlog that you don't want to handle. You can go to pinkblazepro.com to learn more about that. But I've been having a lot of fun with it. And it's fun watching other people's videos. So I learned about taking a CPAP, like the breathing machine on trail in one the other day, which was absolutely wild. I didn't know people could do that. But apparently there's like UL versions.
Huh.
So you learn something new every day.
Yeah. Appalachian Trails and Pacific Crest Trails are my books.
Hiking from home.
Subscribe and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow us on YouTube.
Hi, Internet.
And that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening, and happy hiking.
Bye.